2 worlds I studied at Hogwarts. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 1: The Boy Who Lived Under the Bridge. Buzz feeling the sound of iron four-wheeled vehicles rolling over the road above his head, Scarlett slowly opened his eyes. "I'm back again," after sighing. Whether it was disappointment or joy, Moon turned his head to look at the second-hand alarm clock he had just picked up from the trash can during the day. There were only 2 pointers on the blue alarm clock, and the longest one had just passed 3 small grids. 7 days in Xilin town, only 3 minutes here. That's right, this is not Moon's original world, because there is only one moon in the night sky here. In Xilin, the red moon and the white moon always appear alternately, and every once in a while there will even be a spectacle of 2 moons in the sky. The old people in the town said that the appearance of 2 moons means that the devil has opened his eyes, so every time this happens, the monastery in the town will sound the alarm. And Moon was also pulled into this strange world on the night when the 2 moons appeared last time. Lifting the blanket he got from the relief center, Moon sat up and knocked his leather boots on the ground first, and sure enough, a spider ran out from it. After watching the spider crawl back into the crack in the wall, Moon put on his shoes and stepped on the stone floor. This solid feeling of being able to touch the ground is very good, because it can alleviate the unreality of his cross-world adventure every 7 days. Thump thump. After stamping his feet on the ground twice, 2 chirps came from the fist-sized stone hole in the wall, as if reminding Moon not to disturb its sleep. "Sorry, Bengbeng." Hearing the call of a familiar friend, Moon knew that this was the new world called London. 2 months ago, Moon, who had just arrived, was very confused and helpless. He could not speak the local dialect, had never seen a 4-wheeled iron car that could run without horses but just fart, had never seen a house as tall as 4 or 5 Xilin monasteries, and a big iron bird that would fly in the sky and keep buzzing. It was very difficult to adapt to these, but at that time, solving the problem of eating was the most important thing. For a whole day, Moon followed the people on the road and wandered around. Maybe it was because the wool felt jacket he wore was very beautiful. Moon thought so. Anyway, people around him looked at him very curiously. He was lucky. In the evening of that day, a neatly dressed man brought him a portion of food. A bowl of thick porridge of unknown grains and a soft bread. Moon swore that this was the best bread he had ever eaten, not only because he had been hungry all day, but also because he had never eaten such soft bread. In Xilin, the best bread he had eaten was so hard that it could be used as a hammer to nail wood boards. This kind of black bread can be kept for several months. When eating, it needs to be cut into thin slices as wide as fingers with a tooth saw, and it is delicious to bake it on the fire or soak it in goat milk. Maybe because he was very hungry, Moon took 5 more pieces of bread and 2 bowls of porridge from the man. These foods were the first warmth that Moon felt when he came to the strange world. That night, on a bench in an aristocratic garden, Moon spent his first night here. However, beautiful things are always short-lived and fleeting. When Moon came to the place where he could get food the next day, he found that the person who gave him food yesterday called 2 men in uniform, and they pointed at him from time to time while Moon was eating. Seeing the 2 men in uniform coming towards him, Moon ran away. With a quick reaction he had in the past when chasing hazel grouse in the hazel forest, Moon quickly got rid of the pursuit of 2 adults. He didn't know how the world would treat an 11-year-old boy, but whether it was a poor house without freedom or being captured to serve as a soldier on the battlefield, it was not a good choice for him. Finding food, clothes, and housing. Moon spent the first 7 days in London in a continuous cycle of these 3 things. 7 days later, he returned to Xilin. He didn't tell anyone about this magical thing because he didn't have a friend to confide in. He just regarded these 7 days as a strange dream trip, and he thought that things would end like this. But he came back 7 days later. Now more than 2 months have passed, and Moon has become familiar with the strange world of London. No, yesterday? No, it was 7 days ago that he knew this world was called England. Moon learned some local dialects in order to survive better. Especially the dialects related to coins, Moon learned them the fastest. He knew that people here would use 2 kinds of coins to buy small things, pennies and pounds. As for those blue, orange, purple, and red banknotes, he had only seen them from a distance, but never received them. After all, you don't need banknotes to buy animal wood carvings. That's right, Selling all kinds of animal wood carvings is how Moon supports himself in the British world. In Xilin town, he is responsible for guarding a 100-acre hazelnut forest. He usually has a lot of free time, so he learned wood carving from Uncle Neil. Now the level of his carving of red squirrels, hazel grouse, and hummingbirds has surpassed Uncle Neil, because these animals are frequent visitors to the hazelnut forest. Of course, there are now more elephants, rhinos, alpacas, and penguins. These are the animals that Moon has seen in the British world. People in the British world are very strange. They keep animals in captivity not to make them work or eat meat, but just for viewing. They call the place where these animals live a zoo, and ordinary people have to pay to enter. Moon's current work is inspired by the zoo, and the place where he sells is right in front of the zoo. This is a good place to do business, and it took him 3 days to find this treasure. At first, he sold on the bridge hole where he lived, but there were not many pedestrians passing by the bridge, and most of them were adults driving. Later, he moved the stall to the street, and then he came to the zoo entrance. There are a lot of children here, and he can sell about 10 wood carvings every day. Of course, it's not that Moon doesn't want to sell more, but that his carving speed can't keep up. He will take time to carve when he sets up the stall during the day, and only sleep for 6 hours at night, so he can only carve 5 little penguins a day. As for the rest, they were all carved after he returned to Xilin. This may be the best reward after coming to a strange world. Moon can bring things from Xilin town to the British world. But he can't bring things back to Xilin, even if he holds the thing in his hand all the time. But this is not bad. Moon now has 7 more days than others. Looking out from the narrow hole in the bridge hole, a ray of light appeared on the horizon. The night had quietly slipped away, and it was time for Moon to set off. Today he must go and see what the monkey's nose looks like, so that he can have one more object for his sculpture. As for why he had to go out so early in the morning, it was because the London Zoo only offered free tickets to children under 3 years old. At this time, he could sneak in through the back door while the garbage 4-wheeler was leaving. Bengbeng, I'm leaving. Remember to keep an eye on our money, Chi, Bengbeng. The only answer he got was the crisp cry coming from the hole in the wall, but Moon knew that it was the other party who was reassuring him. Bengbeng is a black-haired long-nosed beast, and is the first friend Moon made when he came to this world. At that time, it was surrounded by 4 or 5 big black dogs in the corner of the wall. It was Moon who used a slingshot to repel the big black dogs and saved it, and then it depended on Moon. Moon did not refuse, because he just needed to find someone to talk to, even if this person was a beast that looked like a mouse. As for the origin of the name Bengbeng, it was given to it by Moon later. He found that whenever Bengbeng got something shiny, he would jump around happily, as if his little paws were equipped with springs, hence the name. He bent down and crawled out of the bridge hole, took out the bag of wood carvings, dragged a tattered door panel over to cover the hole, and then clapped his hands and left. It was very close to the zoo from Regent Bridge, and you could get there by crossing a park. There were not many pedestrians on the road at this time, but the ground was wet, and it seemed that it had rained a little last night. He rushed to the back door of the zoo in advance, hid behind a stone pillar at the door, and took advantage of the gap when the garbage truck left to slip in easily. However, after entering the zoo, he did not go to see the monkeys first, but went to Hidden White House. This is the staff cafeteria of the zoo, and Moon has been eating breakfast here for more than a month. After washing his hands and picking up a clean white plate, Moon began to choose today's breakfast. There are relatively few people eating at this time, and most of the keepers will take care of the animals early in the morning. There are also a few children in the queue, so Moon is not very conspicuous. Moon knew the food in the staff cafeteria well. Today was Monday, so there should be fried sausages. He first took an omelette, cheese toast, and a glass of juice, and then came to the person in charge of frying sausages. Moon showed what he thought was the most innocent smile and thanked the other party, and then he was given 2 more slices. Whose child is this? Amy, so polite. Oh, it might be Winnie from the Penguin House. You know she's not doing well. Just look at the child's clothes. Ignoring the conversation between the fat chef and the lady in charge of soup next to him, Moon has already started to enjoy the delicious breakfast. After breakfast and a simple wash, Moon came to the Monkey Mountain. His memory is very good. He has carved a monkey template after just a few glances. When the carving was finished, there were also a few guests in the zoo. Puff blowing away the sawdust, he looked at the new work with satisfaction, and ran quickly to the zoo entrance. How much is the little monkey? 50 pence, Mom. The sun had already set, and Moon's stall was much emptier. Today he sold 12 wood carvings. Everything went very smoothly. There were many children. There were no emergencies in the zoo, and no animals ran out to scare his customers. Moon remembered very clearly that on the 23rd of last month, a python escaped from the zoo, and a customer ran away with his alpaca wood carving without paying. It was also on that day that he found a fellow of his kind. A little boy wearing glasses and being gentle and polite. He had a blank frame on his head, just like Moon. This was the sign of a spellcaster. Moon thought that only he had it, but after seeing a spellcaster from the Federal Military Academy in Xilin, he knew that he was not the only one. At that time, there were 2 long horizontal lines in the frame on the man's head. In the conversation between the administrator of Xilin Town and the other party, Moon learned that the other party was here to test the qualifications of all children of school age. That day was also the day when Moon wanted to escape from Xilin completely. The test was divided into 2 parts, and more than 500 children were selected. Moon and another girl entered the second round, but in the end he was eliminated. Those who can sense magic but cannot cast it are the worst casters, and there is no need to train them. Half-baked spiritual perceiver. This is the comment given to Moon by the caster. I don't know who spread this title. Moon became famous in Xilin, and later people directly called him half-baked. He didn't know whether these people were jealous or regretful. Anyway, Moon was not used to this title. He hid in York Farm and guarded the hazelnut forest alone, so that he could be quiet. But Moon was not reconciled, especially knowing that he missed the opportunity to study magic at the Federal Military Academy. Who doesn't yearn for a magician? The most mysterious combat army of the Federation, the most cruel killing tool of the Mad King of the Empire, and the messenger of the Church to maintain justice. These have nothing to do with Moon. On the day when the python escaped, Moon gave a carved knight's sword to his kind, hoping that he could cheer up. When the little boy thanked him, he found that there was a lightning-like scar on his head, which was very eye-catching. After selling the last little monkey, Moon packed up and prepared to go back. He had to take care of his own dinner, and bring snacks for Bengbeng, once a week, which was already a routine. When passing by a bakery, Moon spent 48 pence to buy a bag of the cheapest sliced bread and a bottle of water. Then he bought a 100-gram bag of dried mealworms at a pet supply store for £1. Walking back while eating bread, Moon felt that everything was moving in the right direction. With his carving skills, he finally had the capital to survive in this strange world. Even if there was no magic here that he longed for. But changes sometimes always come unexpectedly. When Moon returned to the Regent Bridge tunnel, he found a tabby cat blocking the entrance. A tabby cat with 5 grid frames on its head, asking for follow-up reading, monthly tickets, and recommendation tickets from the little wizard. Chapter 2. Notice from Magic School. Moon had already grasped the knife for carving wood carvings in his hand. He now regretted not bringing the slingshot with him, which was his weapon for attacking animals that stole hazelnuts. However, even if the slingshot and the knife were in his hand, they might not be of much use. A cat with 5 bars, even if the opponent was the same size as an ordinary cat, Moon did not think he could defeat the opponent. But he could not run away, because Bengbeng was still in the bridge hole at this time, and he did not know whether the cat liked to eat the black-haired long-nosed beast with a collector's habit. The tabby cat also noticed Moon's abnormality, blinked its checkered eyes, and walked closer to him with an elegant step. Moon unconsciously took 2 steps back. It seems that you do have the talent of a wizard, the tabby cat spoke. And after speaking, it turned into a person. A woman wearing a black robe, a pointed hat, and a very serious expression. Seeing such a bizarre scene, Moon reached out to hold the stone pillar next to him. He tried to control his body not to retreat, because behind him was the Regent River. Don't be afraid, kid. I just came here to ask why you didn't reply. Letter. What letter? An acceptance letter from Hogwarts. Don't tell me you didn't receive it. I don't want another family like the Dursleys to appear this year. Hearing the other party's reminder, Moon suddenly remembered that he did receive a strange letter 10 days ago. A letter sent by an owl, but he thought it was a prank. After all, he didn't know anyone in this world. He also opened the letter, but he couldn't recognize some of the words on the letter. After reading it roughly, he put the letter in the bridge hole. This, Moon was still a little nervous. He had never seen a woman with such a serious expression. You can call me Professor McGonagall. Okay, Professor McGonagall, you said it was an acceptance letter. Yes, An acceptance letter from Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, Magic School. After hearing these 4 words, Moon opened his mouth in surprise, and then he quickly went back to the bridge hole without saying a word. McGonagall was also startled by Moon's sudden action. Slow down, kid. If being called a half-baked psychic for 4 years has changed Moon, then the biggest change is Moon's determination to prove that he is not half-baked. Now the tabby cat can talk, has become a human, and has an admission letter from the magic school. Moon knows that this is the last chance he must seize. Wait for me, Professor. Moon's words came from the bridge hole, and then there was a sound of rummaging through boxes. But soon, he came out holding a parchment envelope. Found it. This is it. Moon held the envelope and smiled happily at McGonagall, as if he was holding something more important than his life. Looking down at the emerald green ink marks and the unique school emblem of Hogwarts on the envelope, McGonagall nodded. Yes, I saw you open the letter. Why didn't you reply? I don't recognize some of the words. Moon's voice was very low, and his shy expression seemed to have made a big mistake. I really don't know what these muggles are doing. They let a child wander alone and not receive education. McGonagall wanted to complain about the lack of muggle administration, but then she seemed to think of something and her expression became unnatural. Okay, kid, let me read it to you. Taking the envelope handed by Moon, McGonagall cleared her throat. Mr. Moon Scarlett, Regent's Bridge, Regent's Park, West End, London. McGonagall first read the address on the envelope. She wanted to let Moon know that the notice from Hogwarts would not be sent to the wrong place. Then she quickly opened the letter and read it. Albus Dumbledore, Headmaster of Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, President of the International Confederation of Wizards, First Class Grand Master of the Order of Merlin, Chief Wizard of the Wizengamot. Dear Mr. Scarlett, we are pleased to inform you that you have been accepted to study at Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Enclosed is a list of required books and equipment. The semester is scheduled to start on September 1st. We will be waiting for your owl to bring your reply before July 31st. Sincerely, Vice Principal Minerva McGonagall. Okay, now you know the contents of the letter. Mr. Scarlett, do you choose to study at Hogwarts? So this is what the words on the letter meant. Before Moon could react, McGonagall spoke again. Of course, if you choose not to go to Hogwarts, I can also recommend you to other schools, Buxbuttons or Durmstrang. No. I'll go. Moon waved his hand quickly and looked at McGonagall. Okay, on behalf of Hogwarts, I welcome you, child, but, Professor McGonagall, how do I get to Hogwarts? And how much does the school charge? In Xilin, if you want to study magic, you need to pay a lot of tuition. At first, Uncle Neil was worried that he couldn't afford the money, but later he didn't have to pay it. Now that he is going to Hogwarts, Moon asked directly. He didn't know if the money he saved for 2 months was enough to support his magic studies. To go to Hogwarts, you need to go to King's Cross Station in London on September 1st and take the train from platform 9 at 11 o'clock. As for tuition, board and lodging, these are all free, but you need to buy the things on this shopping list yourself. McGonagall handed Moon the list of school supplies and books in the letter. Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, uniform, first-year students need 1. 3 sets of plain robes, black. 2. A plain peaked hat for daytime wear, black. All students must prepare the following books. The Standard Book of Spells, Elementary, written by Miranda Goshawk. A History of Magic, written by Bathilda Bagshot. Other equipment, a 1A crucible, pewter, standard size 2. Students can bring an owl, a cat or a toad. Parents are reminded that first-year students are not allowed to bring their own broomsticks. Moon needed to connect the context to figure out the meaning of some words on the table. However, looking at the length of the form and the dense text on it, Moon knew that the cost should be high. While Moon was looking at the shopping list with worry, McGonagall looked around the poor living environment here. Professor McGonagall, where can I buy these things? Moon didn't know what store would sell these things. Anyway, he had never seen a related store near Regent's Park. These need to go to Diagon Alley, which is the most prosperous shopping street in the entire magical world. Here is a shopping guide and a ticket to Hogwarts. McGonagall said that 2 yellow parchments, 1 large and 1 small, flew out of her black robe and landed steadily in Moon's hand. Moon was attracted by the charm of magic again. Of course, Mr. Scarlett, if you agree. The school actually has subsidies. McGonagall had just said half of her words when a gray and white owl suddenly flew down from a distance and landed on a stone pillar. Oh, sorry, McGonagall said that she skillfully untied a letter from the owl's leg, touched the other's head, and the owl flew away directly. After opening the letter and reading it quickly, Moon found that McGonagall's face had obviously turned ugly. How can this be? The Dursleys actually moved to a deserted island. It seems that I have to have a good talk with Dumbledore. McGonagall clutched the letter tightly and looked at Moon. Child, if you need anything later, remember to send an owl to send me a letter. After saying that, McGonagall muttered something and then disappeared from the spot. When Moon reacted, there was only an empty river in front of him. He ran to the side of the stone pillar and shouted anxiously, "Professor, but I don't have an owl." Moon's voice was loud. He hoped that Professor McGonagall had not gone far away and could hear his shouting. But after waiting for half an hour, he returned to the bridge hole helplessly. Although Professor McGonagall left in a hurry before she finished speaking, Moon's mood was not much disappointed. Bengbeng also heard the sound of Moon coming back and crawled out of the hole in the wall. Chi, first sound, yes, there are delicious foods today, but Bengbeng, I have good news to tell you. We are going to Hogwarts to learn magic. Chi, second sound, of course it's true. To celebrate this, I also bought you some dried mealworms. Chi, third sound, I will definitely treat you the best, but you have to buy some necessary school supplies to study at Hogwarts. Chi, Bengbeng, this is your fault. I earned that money, and I also brought you a gift, Moon said as he took out a magic wand toy with a star on the head and some sparkling sequins on it from the cloth bag. This was picked up by Moon at the entrance of the zoo. From the first sight of this toy, he knew that Bengbeng would definitely like it. Sure enough, after seeing the toy in Moon's hand, Bengbeng's small eyes lit up instantly. It climbed up along Moon's clothes and tried to grab the toy. However, Moon's speed of changing hands back and forth was much faster than it crawled. No, you have to take out those pennies. Seeing Moon's firm attitude, Bengbeng reluctantly returned to the cave and began to carry the yellow pennies out. Not enough yet. Moon didn't know how many times he shouted, until finally when Bengbeng was shouting and protesting at the hole in the wall, he handed the magic wand toy in his hand to the other party. But before handing it over, he turned on the switch on the magic wand. Click! The magic wand became brighter, and Bengbeng became happier. Moon weighed the bag and found that the coins were still a little light. Please give me the follow-up reading, monthly tickets, and recommendation tickets in the Little Wizard's hand. Chapter 3 Knowledge is expensive everywhere. Professor McGonagall left. Although she didn't explain how to use the owl, she left behind a ticket to Hogwarts. A ticket for the Hogwarts Express. A shopping guide for new students' supplies in Diagon Alley. While Bongbong was admiring the magic wand toy and eating dried mealworms, Moon carefully calculated the next expenses. Comparing the shopping guide, Moon picked up a handy stone and started recording on the wall. 3 plain robes, 12 gold galleons, a plain peaked hat for daytime wear, 3 gold galleons, a pair of protective gloves, made of dragon skin or similar materials, 22 gold galleons and 5 silver sickles, a winter cloak. 5 gold galleons. Clothes alone cost so much money, but what are gold galleons? Moon turned the parchment to the end and found the annotation left by Professor McGonagall. If you need to exchange wizard coins, please go to Gringotts Wizarding Bank in Diagon Alley. In addition, £5 can be exchanged for about 1 gold galleon, 1 gold galleon for 17 silver sickles, and 1 silver sickle for 29 copper nuts. Remember, don't trust anyone outside the bank. What a careful and rigorous professor. Moon looked at the beautiful handwriting on the parchment, and then began to worry. But after calculating this way, it seems that I really don't have enough money. According to Professor McGonagall's annotations, Moon quickly calculated the price. At least £212.50, not including textbooks and school supplies. Looking at the purse tied on the bed, Moon took 2 deep breaths, then raised his hand and continued to list each item of expenditure on the wall. He now had to know how many pence he still needed to learn magic. Fortunately, the price of the textbooks that followed made Moon feel a little better. The Standard Book of Spells, Elementary, 1 galleon A History of Magic, 2 galleons Magic Theory, 2 galleons A Beginner's Guide to Transfiguration, 1 galleon 1000 Magical Herbs and Fungi, 2 galleons Magical Potions and Spells, 2 galleons Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, 2 galleons The Dark Arts, A Guide to Self-Defense, 1 galleon 13 galleons, or £65. I should only have enough money to buy these textbooks, a wand, 7 galleons a crucible, 15 galleons a set of small glass or crystal medicine bottles, 5 galleons a telescope, 5 galleons a brass scale, 3 galleons plus parchment, ink, and a quill. No need for a pet, just Bengbeng is enough. Gee yes, you're enough. That makes a total of 95 galleons. That means I need to prepare at least 500 pounds. Professor McGonagall, why don't you come back and finish what you are saying before you leave? Moon threw away the stone in his hand and shouted towards the cave entrance. After counting every coin in the purse, Moon didn't know whether he should be happy or not. He gave the purse to Bengbeng to manage, first for safety considerations, and second because he was worried that he would spend money recklessly. After all, there are too many attractive things in this world. It was also because Bengbeng managed the money that Moon saved £210 in the past 2 months, of which 200 was the proceeds from his wood carvings, and the rest was Bengbeng's private money. It is now the beginning of August, less than a month before the start of school, which means that Moon needs to earn £300 in 30 days. It seems that Uncle Neil is right, knowledge is priceless. Moon lay helplessly on the bed, looking up and listening to the four-wheeled vehicles passing by on the bridge, and then the dust fell. Bengbeng has finished eating the dried mealworms, but his interest in the magic wand has not diminished. Seeing Moon's chest rising and falling, it struggled to climb up, and pulled up the magic wand and shook it continuously. Looking at the magic wand toy swaying left and right in front of him, Moon knew that this was his last chance to learn magic, and he must seize it. Bengbeng, we will definitely go to Hogwarts. Taking the carving knife and holding a bundle of hazelnut branches, Moon came to the outside of the bridge hole. The street lights on the bridge were very bright, and a beam of light just happened to shine down to provide light for Moon's carving. Therefore, people who travel on the Regent River at night can always inadvertently discover a boy under the bridge and the wood chips floating around him. Professor McGonagall is very busy, especially in the period before school starts. At this time of year, she must go to the homes of some Muggle little wizards and explain to the parents of the little wizards that Hogwarts is not a pheasant school. But this year is even worse. The Dursleys have rejected 792 letters she wrote. Although the content of the letter can be handled with a copying spell, this number is enough to drive her crazy. Especially when she found out that the Dursleys actually moved to an uninhabited island with Harry. I've said it before, Dumbledore, that the Dursleys are unreliable. In order to prevent Harry from coming to Hogwarts, they actually moved their entire family to an island. Really? Really? Coming to the principal's office from the spiral staircase, McGonagall looked angrily at the white-bearded principal behind the desk. Don't be angry, Minerva, maybe you need a cup of hot drink to relieve yourself, and you know they are Harry's only relatives. Dumbledore put down the quill in his hand, waved his hand gently, and a teacup and a teapot floated in front of McGonagall. But that's exactly what happened. They clearly knew the existence of the magical world, but they did everything they could to prevent Harry from coming to Hogwarts. This is not something that relatives can do. McGonagall took a sip of the teacup, and her mood calmed down a little. Seeing the unfinished letter on the desk, she spoke again. I know you are very busy, Dumbledore, but this matter must be dealt with. Seeing McGonagall's firm expression, Dumbledore nodded helplessly. Okay, Fawkes, please tell Hagrid to come to the office. Seeing the Phoenix disappear, McGonagall was relieved. Albus, are you writing to Nicholas Flamel? Yes, I am reluctant to part with my old friend. You know, this is the only one in the world. McGonagall knew what Dumbledore was talking about, but she couldn't comment on it. After all, this was a friendship between a wizard who is over 100 years old and a wizard who is over 600 years old. But when she saw the quill and parchment on Dumbledore's desk, she seemed to remember something. Dumbledore, are you sure we want to admit that child who suddenly appeared into the school? Of course, as long as his name is on the admission book. I can't think of any reason to refuse, but this is too strange. His name was written on the admission pen and the admission book 3 months ago, but he only appeared out of thin air in London 2 months ago, and we can't even find any trace of his past. This is the charm of magic, Minerva. Maybe this child can bring us some unexpected surprises. Dumbledore is always like this, accepting everything with tolerance, just like Lupin and Hagrid many years ago, and of course that him. Now there is a more mysterious child who can't even be explained by magic. McGonagall doesn't know whether Dumbledore's decision this time is correct. Just when she thought of this, the person who came up the spiral staircase interrupted her thoughts. You came just in time, Hagrid. I need you to do something. I'm happy to help, Headmaster. After leaving the headmaster's office, McGonagall plunged into her busy work again. She really hoped that school would start now, so that she wouldn't have to worry about all kinds of problems with new students. Please give me the follow-up reading, monthly ticket and recommendation ticket from the Little Wizard. Chapter 4: How to Enter Diagon Alley. Moon became very busy in the following time. He shortened his sleeping time in the bridge hole by 1 hour so that he could carve one more little penguin. But even though his wood carving skills have improved a lot, he can only carve 2 more small animals every day than usual, which is still a long way from 300 pounds. However, when Moon returned to Xilin 7 days later, things took a turn for the better. Little Moon, the hazelnuts will not be ripe for more than a month. Why don't you go home to see them? Your Aunt Daisy nags you every day. The speaker was Moon's uncle, Neil. As the manager of York Farm, he managed thousands of acres of orchards including the hazelnut forest. It was also his arrangement that Moon could come here to work. Uncle, after this busy month, I will go to see Aunt and Sophia. Moon said that, but the carving action in his hands did not stop. He was working hard for his plan to save money almost every moment. Looking at the various wood carvings placed in the wooden house, Neil looked at them curiously. Some of the carved small animals he recognized, some he didn't, but he was sure that his nephew Moon had never seen some of them. Rhinoceros, lions, tigers, these animals he had only encountered when he was a soldier when he was young. Little Moon, are you hiding something from me? Neil looked at his nephew worriedly. It was Moon's father who saved his life on the battlefield, which was why he insisted on taking care of Moon even though he dragged his crippled leg. Moon had many secrets that he didn't tell Uncle Neil, such as he could see the long strips on the caster's head, and he could go to that strange world. At first he didn't know how to say it. After all, Uncle Neil not only had to take care of his family, but also had to manage the entire farm, and even those veterans who retired from the battlefield, he would often help and take care of them. Neil was too busy, so Moon felt that there was no need to tell these secrets. Of course, sometimes in order to ease his inner pain, he would tell the secrets to Bengbeng. But in this world, Bengbeng couldn't get through. Uncle Neil, it's not an important matter, I just need some money. Seeing that Moon had carved out the prototype of a monkey just by talking, Neil reached into his pocket. I just happen to have 3 federal silver coins here, you can take them. Moon did not take the silver coins. He did not know how to explain that federal silver coins were not recognized in another world. Uncle, you saved all your money without telling Aunt Daisy. You should keep it. If you really want to help me, please help me carve a few wood carvings. Moon learned the wood carving skills from Neil. He knew that the other party's salary was not high. Compared with silver coins, carving a few more wood carvings might help him more. So these wood carvings are all for selling, but I didn't see anyone in the town buying them. Oh, I have discussed it with a traveling merchant. He will come and trade in a few days. Moon glanced at Neil who was still looking at the wood carvings and explained carefully. Is that so? Then I can tell you that these small animal wood carvings are not worth much. If you want to sell them at a good price, you still need to carve figures. After Moon's persuasion, Neil used his real skills. Soldiers riding horses appeared vividly on the wood. Each character was carved vividly. And even the rank ribbons of soldiers of different levels could be seen. Under the guidance of Uncle Neil, Moon's carving skills gradually improved a lot, but he still couldn't carve the eyes of the characters so vividly. Neil said that this requires long-term observation, or even living with these people for a longer time to understand the essence. Moon felt that he had no chance, because the one who stayed with him the longest at this stage was a black-haired long-nosed beast. It didn't matter if he couldn't carve a character for the time being. Moon had already seen the hope of solving the problem. He sold the knight carved by Uncle Neil for a good price, £2 each. This is 4 times the price of small animal sculptures. After being placed at the entrance of the zoo, it soon attracted many little boys to come around, and even some adult men would buy several different versions of knight wood carvings at one time. As for those little girls, they still prefer chubby penguins. August 31st, the weather was sunny and breezy. This was the last day before Hogwarts started, and it was also the time for Moon to collect £500. To be precise, it was £500 and 50 pence, which was the exact number that Moon counted 3 times last night. Of course, it was not without cost to get this huge sum of money. Moon's hands had been cut more than 30 times, and the deepest one could see the whiteness. Not only the knife cuts, but also the blisters on the base of his right hand due to holding the knife for a long time had broken 3 times. But these pains didn't matter, because Moon finally got the admission ticket to learn magic today. In addition, This day was also the best time for Moon to go shopping. According to the experience of the most proficient bargainer in Moon's social circle, Aunt Daisy once said, if you want to buy the most suitable yellow fish, you must wait until the fishmonger is about to close the stall. In Xilin town, Moon also used this trip to kill the fishmonger area on the white sand beach. After coming to London, this trick naturally cannot be left behind. Early in the morning, following the parchment instructions left by Professor McGonagall, Moon came to the long-awaited entrance to the magic world. The leaky cauldron. Seeing that the facade was even older than the bridge hole where he lived, Moon was a little suspicious whether this was a gathering place for vagrants. After wandering on the street opposite the bar for a while, when Moon mustered up the courage to cross the road, a man with no hair and a shrunken walnut-like appearance came out. A man in a black robe was lying on him. Seeing that the two people opposite had bars on their heads that only magicians had, Moon finally determined that the shabby storefront might just be a cover-up. Do you need help? Moon quickly crossed the street and said to the bald man. Oh, no, Valentine is just drunk, like this every day, but I have to get him out. After all, there will be new customers soon. Maybe it was because of the fresh air, or maybe it was because the conversation disturbed the drunk man. The man named Valentine sobered up, thanked the bald man, and staggered away alone. Boss, I'm going to Diagon Alley. Moon just heard the drunk man call the other party the bar owner, so when the bald man was about to return to the bar, he stopped him. Judging from your age, you should be a new wizard at Hogwarts this year. You are so brave to go to Diagon Alley alone. Yes, Professor McGonagall is a bit busy, so she left me a guide, Moon said, taking out a piece of parchment from his jacket pocket. Professor McGonagall? Indeed, she should be the busiest professor at Hogwarts, the bald man said as if recalling something, and then looked at Moon. Come in, little wizard. After entering the bar, Moon found that the interior decoration was indeed very old, but the style was very similar to the bars in Xilin town. I will open soon, so I can't accompany you, but you have to know that after buying everything according to Professor McGonagall's requirements, leave immediately and don't enter unfamiliar alleys, understand? Seeing that Moon was still observing the decoration of the bar, the bald boss shouted. Come to the backyard, kid. Boss, is Diagon Alley dangerous? Moon followed the boss to the backyard, and his right hand touched the slingshot in his pocket. This is his weapon for dealing with squirrels that steal hazelnuts, and it is also something he can use to defend himself. It's been okay lately. I don't know which guy is stealing in Gringotts, and groups of Aurors are lurking in Diagon Alley to catch him. But even so, kid, you must remember not to enter unfamiliar alleys, okay? Thank you, boss. After getting Moon's response, the bald boss took out a small wooden stick from his shirt and tapped the wall a few times. Then a small hole appeared in the wall, and then the small hole turned into a bright passage. Go, kid, please give me the follow-up reading, monthly ticket, and recommendation ticket from the little wizard. Chapter 5, Bustling Gringotts. Moon never thought that one day he would see so many people with long bars on their heads. 3 bars, 4 bars, 3 bars, blank, 3 bars. Moon always thought that these bars of different colors represented the strength of the magician. In Xilin, he had only seen one child and the admissions officer of the Alliance Military Academy with bars on their heads. At that time, the child's head was blank, while the admissions officer had 2 bars on his head. However, a single example does not mean anything. Just like the hazelnut forest he guards, you can't say that this year's harvest is not good just because 1 or 2 trees have few fruits. Now he has seen many wizards, and the longest bar still belongs to Professor McGonagall, with a full 5 bars. However, after seeing so many magicians, Moon became even more confused. The wizard who looked very old just now actually had the same blank box on his head. Is the strength of a wizard unrelated to his age? Regardless of the strength of these wizards, Moon felt that this street called Diagon Alley was very comfortable to stay in. The overall environment here is similar to his hometown, with dilapidated bars, old brick walls, cobblestone streets and old shop decorations. This ancient feeling is the appearance of Xilin. As soon as Moon came out of the passage, he saw a store selling all kinds of strange kitchen utensils. He looked at the plaque curiously, Partridge Crucible Shop. Moon now understands the meaning of all the words on the shopping instructions. He knows that this kind of crucible is also one of the must-buy items for admission. Looking at the pile of various crucibles on the window and the price of the pure gold crucible next to it, Moon touched the purse hidden in his chest and rushed towards Gringotts. There were more and more people in Diagon Alley. Moon found that most of the wizards' clothes were dark, and everyone was wearing robes. A pair of bat wings costs 5 galleons, they should go and rob them. Hurry up and get the money out of Gringotts, it's not safe there. The reporter from the Daily Prophet has gone there again. They don't believe that Gringotts didn't lose anything. Listening to the conversations of people coming and going, Moon felt more and more magical. This place is simply two different worlds from London outside the wall. Following two wizards who were talking about going to Gringotts, Moon soon came to a snow-white building. Looking at the sign of Gringotts Wizard Bank on the door, Moon knew that this was the place where wizard currency could be exchanged. But Gringotts was particularly lively today. Many people surrounded a short man in a black dress. Moon was stunned. The person surrounded in the middle seemed to be not a human. Just when Moon was curious, a short weird man in a scarlet and gold uniform came over. "Welcome to Gringotts Wizard Bank. What business do you want to handle, sir?" "I want to exchange gold galleons." "Okay, please follow me." Gringotts is decorated very grandly, much more grand than the Parliament Hall in Xilin town. The counters on both sides were filled with these short-looking weirdos, but the businesses they handled seemed to be relatively expensive. Gems, pearls, gold bars. These things that Moon had never seen in Xilin were carefully weighed and collected by these dwarves. Moon only took a quick glance and was led to a counter at the edge. This position just faced the messy crowd outside. "Mr. Right, how can you be sure that nothing is lost in Gringotts? After all, you can't enter the vault." "Of course, we won't enter without the permission of the vault owner, but the doors of these vaults are intact." Moon could hear the sharp questioning of a middle-aged woman outside the door, as well as the sound of snapping photos. Sir, do you want to exchange gold galleons?" "Oh, yes." Hearing the dwarf behind the counter calling him, Moon immediately took out 2 cloth bags from the chest of his shirt and placed them on the counter. Looking at the old cloth bags and the sound of coins colliding from them, the dwarf behind the counter looked cold. The coins in the 2 bags fell onto the counter, and the dwarf's face became even worse. "Sir, we don't accept copper coins from muggles, only pounds," the dwarf said, picking up a 20-pence coin and looking at Moon. "Is there such a rule?" "Well, everyone thinks so, but I don't know, and you don't have a rule, right?" It was almost noon now, and Moon had no time to go back to the bank outside to exchange pounds, and then come back to exchange gold galleons. By then, the shops here might be closed. "This has nothing to do with me. We really don't accept copper coins." Moon and the other party spoke loudly, because otherwise they couldn't hear clearly, because the reporters outside were too noisy. The dwarf said, holding up the coins and putting them in the bag. Moon looked at the many people around who were withdrawing money, and the messy crowd outside, and a bold idea flashed through his mind. "Gringotts bullying!" A loud male voice just shouted halfway, and immediately a dwarf in a black uniform came over. Sir, don't shout. Tell me if you need anything." Seeing that everyone around him looked over and the chaotic noise outside the door quieted down, Moon explained to the other party with satisfaction. "Change it quickly. Didn't you see that Wright was having a hard time dealing with it outside? Rita Skeeter is notoriously difficult to deal with. If she comes in again, but we don't have a precedent, sir, don't we?" "Don't worry, after today, the bank will issue new regulations and will no longer accept Muggle copper coins." Moon didn't know what the 2 dwarfs said, but he finally got his first bucket of gold galleons as he wished. Today's exchange rate of gold galleons to pounds is 1.075, sir. Here are your gold galleons. While the other party was anxiously waiting, Moon counted the 107 golden coins 3 times before leaving Gringotts with peace of mind. "Thanks to the wizard who stole things in Gringotts," Moon muttered as he walked out of the door of Gringotts. He knew that this thief, who was probably a dark wizard in the eyes of others, had helped him twice today. First, he could exchange for gold galleons smoothly. Second, there were many Aurors lurking on the road. Moon knew that it was very dangerous for him to have hundreds of gold galleons on him despite being young, but fortunately, no one followed him along the way. After coming out of Gringotts, Moon first followed the shopping instructions on the parchment and came to Madame Malkin's robe store. Madame Malkin was a short and fat witch with a sweet smile and a purple dress. Moon felt very friendly when he saw her for the first time. "Oh, I didn't expect that there would be a little wizard coming to buy our robes today." Hearing what the other party said, Moon laughed happily. It seemed that he had made the right choice today. "Don't look at it, dear. The school uniforms are all uniform. You can try them first. How about it, dear? If you need it, I will recut it according to the size just now." It will be very quick. I believe you can get it when you buy other things back, Madame Malkin asked, holding the clothes that Moon had just tried on her wrist. Can it be cheaper, my dear? I'm sure you know the price. Here are 22 gold galleons and 5 silver sickles in total. I can get rid of the decimals if necessary. Can it be cheaper? For example, 15. Before Moon could finish his words, Madame Malkin shook her head. Kid, you can't bargain like this. It's you who want to go to school, not me closing down the shop to clear out the inventory. Okay, Moon reacted. Almost all the wizards here were robes, and Madame Malkin can't sell it at half price just because he is the last person to buy a school robe this year. Looking at Moon's embarrassed expression and the scars on his hands, Madame Malkin shook her head helplessly. Of course, my dear, if you have any difficulties, you can go to the second-hand robe shop next door. Please give the follow-up reading, monthly ticket, and recommendation ticket from the Little Wizard. Chapter 6, Second-hand items are also very fragrant. Madame Malkin's suggestion is really great. Before today, Moon had never thought of buying second-hand items to go to school. In Xilin town, everyone wears clothes for a long time until they are torn, and then they will be altered for the children at home. But it seems to be very different in the UK. There are not only special second-hand robe shops here, but also second-hand bookstores and thrift stores. Seeing that there are many people in each second-hand store, Moon sighed that he could spend less money, and at the same time, he felt that wizards were not so high and mighty. With only 9 gold galleons, Moon bought all the clothes, including robes, peaked hats, gloves, and cloaks. In addition, he paid 10 silver sickles to let the shopkeeper help to modify the size. Seeing that the shopkeeper's wife had the same figure as Madame Malkin, Moon looked at each other curiously. Don't look at it, child, we are sisters. Moon was not angry because Madame Malkin recommended her family's store. He now likes to buy second-hand items. In the second-hand bookstore next door, Moon bought all the textbooks and some necessary parchment, ink, and quill pens for 5 gold galleons. Seeing Moon coming back with a pile of books, the lady of the second-hand robe shop also packed her clothes. Child, you can go to the second-hand shop to buy a suitcase first. You can also buy a crucible for making potions and a brass scale there. The owner is very nice, but you must remember that you must go to Ollivander to buy your wand. Moon was very good at following advice, but he still had to negotiate the price. In the end, he spent a total of 47 gold galleons to get all the necessities for the new school except the wand, including a second-hand suitcase. Although the suitcase was second-hand, Moon also selected it for a long time. The fat shopkeeper said that this suitcase can not only reduce weight, but also expand space. Even if all the luggage for school is put in, there will still be half the space. Carrying a suitcase that is almost as heavy as a dozen wooden sculptures, Moon once again felt the magic of magic. Ollivander, making fine wands since 382 BC, this should be the oldest shop Moon has seen today. The shop looks small from the outside, and it is also very quiet inside. There was only one old wizard with white hair who was carefully examining a wand. Looking at the thousands of long boxes densely placed behind the old wizard, Moon knew why the owner of the second-hand robe shop had persuaded him to come here. There were more wands here than the hazelnut trees in the hazelnut forest he was guarding. Good afternoon, are you here to buy wands? I have to say that you are really late, kid. Seeing Moon nod, Ollivander took the ruler and walked over. You usually use your right hand, right? Yes. The tape measure with silver scales measured Moon all over, first from the shoulder to the fingertips, then from the wrist to the elbow, shoulder to the floor, knee to armpit, and finally the head circumference. When measuring his arm, Moon found that Ollivander frowned at his wounded hand. After measuring, Ollivander directly pulled out 3 long boxes from the wand wall. Try these first, for wood acacia wood, grapevine wood. When he tried the 7th one, the wand in Moon's hand finally responded. He waved it lightly, and a wisp of golden stars emerged from the tip of the wand, and then several long boxes on the wall began to jump. Oh, all right, sir. Ollivander snatched the wand and put it back into the box. 12 inches, made of willow wood, the wand Cora's unicorn tail hair. I want to know the wizard who chose the wand. Can I ask your name? If it weren't for Professor McGonagall and the owner of the second-hand robe shop recommending that he must come here, Moon would have suspected that the white-haired old man in front of him was a liar. Moon thought it was a bit too outrageous to wave the wand a few times to confirm that the wand chose him as its master. Moon Scarlett, Mr. Ollivander, why did you choose me for this wand? Good question, sir. The core of unicorn hair is more likely to faithfully reflect the essence of magic and is not interfered with by other magic. And willow wood is an extremely rare wood with extraordinary healing power. It is very suitable for casting advanced silent spells. It usually chooses those wizards with great potential. Moon didn't know whether what Ollivander said was true or not. There was still a trace of doubt in his eyes. Ollivander seemed to have noticed it. He stared at Moon's eyes quietly and spoke again. Of course, for you, sir, people who use willow wands often have a very long journey. Sure enough, a wand shop that can stand for more than 2,000 years has real capital. Moon didn't know if the other party could really see something, or if the wand could tell the other party some secrets. From Xilin to here, Moon should have traveled farther than most people. There was no bargaining this time. Moon took out 7 gold galleons and took the wand box wrapped in brown paper. It was already afternoon after leaving Ollivander's wand shop. Moon knew from the clock hanging on a shop that he hadn't eaten for more than 10 hours. After buying everything, the passion of traveling in the magic world for the first time could no longer suppress the surge of hunger. At a cold drink shop called Florin, Moon bought wizard desserts, 2 cauldron cakes and a cup of special ice cream. This was a reward Moon gave himself because he saved a lot of money today. Finally, he bought food for Bengbeng at a magical animal store. Now he has 52 gold galleons left and 50 pence. When it was getting dark and some shops were planning to close, Moon followed the crowd and left Diagon Alley. Hiding in the crowd was also the safest way for him to leave. After returning to the bridge hole, Moon handed a box of unknown dried insects to Bengbeng, and then couldn't wait to open the textbook and read it. "Chi, I bought it specially for you, it must be delicious." Glancing at Bengbeng, who was eating a bite of dried insects and waving his magic wand toy, Moon started reading standard spells, elementary under the light of the street lamp. He had seen many wizards waving their wands and chanting spells today, and then magical things would happen, which made him very yearning. Moon took out his own mysterious willow wand and waved it, then stuttered and said the spell. Nothing happened. September 1st, the weather was still sunny. Although the ticket was 11 o'clock, the bridge tunnel where Moon lived was also very close to King's Cross Station, but he still got up very early. He took the only night sculpture he kept and came to the staff cafeteria of the zoo. He wanted to thank the chef who had taken care of him for 2 months. At the bottom of the sculpture, Moon engraved the name of the fat chef. To Uncle Guy, look. Amy, this is so beautiful. I want to collect it. The fat chef showed off to his colleagues and shook the wooden sculpture in his hand, then turned to look at Moon. Kid, I don't think you would mind a delicious steak from Scotland. Moon ate his first steak in his life, which was the end of his small bond with this place in the past 3 months. He didn't know when he would come back, so he didn't want to leave any regrets here. Chapter 7, The Hogwarts Express departs. The second-hand suitcase bought at the cost of 7 gold galleons was a good deal. It not only held all of Moon's school necessities, but also his belongings accumulated in the past 3 months. Mattresses, blankets, and old clothes, these were all things he got from the relief center. He didn't know what the school's accommodation environment was like, so he brought all of these. There were also 2 carving knives, a small slingshot, and Bengbeng's little home, a wooden treehole house. This was a piece that Moon cut from a dead hazelnut tree, and then carved it into Bengbeng's little nest. Chi, seeing that Moon also put the treehole house into the suitcase, Bengbeng stood on the empty stone bed and looked over curiously. Yes, I'm leaving. Remember to say goodbye to this place. Chi. The crisp and melodious sound echoed in the bridge hole for a long time, as if the bridge hole was also saying goodbye to Bengbeng. Watching Moon go out of the bridge hole, Bengbeng followed reluctantly, and then climbed onto Moon's shoulder in a few seconds. King's Cross Station is not far from where Moon lives. It takes less than an hour to walk there. However, Moon has never seen so many wizards on this road before. He was worried that he would make mistakes on his first train ride, but now it seems that he won't. Following those people with long stripes on their heads, Moon successfully arrived at the platform of the station. Looking at the wizards who came to the platform and looked around but didn't get on the train, Moon quietly hid behind a pillar. The male wizard had looked at him several times just now. He suspected that the other party mistook him for a muggle. This word was also a new one for Moon. It should be the name that wizards call ordinary people. Sure enough, after Moon hid behind the pillar, the wizard disappeared quickly. Hurrying over again, Moon looked at the pillar where the male wizard disappeared last. This is the stone pillar between platform 9 and platform 10. You can still feel the hardness of the stone when you touch it. Having seen the passage wall in the backyard of the broken axe bar, Moon was not surprised by this pillar. After looking around and seeing no one, Moon took out his wand and tapped the pillar 3 times, then whispered, "This is magic, this is magic, this is magic," backing up, sprinting, and passing through the wall, all in one go. As soon as Moon opened his eyes again, he saw the crimson train in front of him. The sign in front of him read, "Hogwarts Express, 11 o'clock." There were many adults on the platform, and they were all reluctantly saying goodbye to their children. Moon didn't have such troubles, so he picked up his suitcase and got on the train directly. There were already many little wizards playing in the carriages, and each of them had a long strip on their head, but the length was different. Moon saw older students with 3 long strips on their heads in the front row of some carriages. There were very few people like this, and Moon only found 4, while most of the other older students had 2 strips. Moon is now more and more certain that this long strip is likely to be related to the wizard's ability, but he still needs to verify which aspect of the ability it is. Moon found an empty private room and walked in. Then he stepped on the seat to put his suitcase away and looked out the window at the people who were reluctant to leave. Moon thought that wizards in the British world were completely hidden and ordinary people didn't know about their existence. But seeing that there were many people without long stripes on their heads at the station, he knew that it was not the case. Several very eye-catching red-haired children passed through the pillar where Moon had just entered the station. A little boy was crying and telling something to an old woman, and many people were carrying owl cages. This is a pet for wizards to send messages. Moon had seen Professor McGonagall use it. He didn't think it was strange. In Xilin, Moon had heard Uncle Neil, who had been a soldier, say that the Federal Army sometimes used a flying eagle to send messages, which was very fast. Just as Moon was recalling the days in Xilin, a childish voice sounded at the door of the private room. "Hello, is anyone here? The other private rooms are full. You are the boy who sells wood carvings, you are the boy who was bullied by the fat boy." Moon was very surprised, because the gentle boy with glasses in front of him was the only little wizard he met in the zoo. At that time, he saw a fat boy bullying him, and he used a slingshot to teach the fat boy a lesson. "Actually, that was my cousin Dudley. By the way, I haven't thanked you for the night sword you gave me." Moon did give the other party a night sword wood carving that day, but it was for him to play with when he was bored. "That was the first time I received a gift, and I brought it with me, in the suitcase," the gentle boy said and wanted to open the suitcase, but Moon stopped him in time. "Okay, I know. Do you need me to help you put the suitcase on?" "Thank you, my name is Harry, Harry Potter." Moon stepped on the seat again and put Harry's suitcase on it. He was now more and more sure that his suitcase was bought correctly. Harry's suitcase was really too heavy, almost the same weight as a basket of hazelnuts he carried in the hazelnut forest. "Moon Scarlett, nice to meet you." After putting away the box, Harry sat opposite Moon and started to talk. Countless owls, notices flying out of the chimney, angry Uncle Vernon, tall Hagrid, magical Diagon Alley. While Harry and Moon were chatting, the train started slowly. The two stopped talking and looked at the scenery outside the window. Soon the door of the compartment opened again, and a red-haired boy with freckles stood at the door, pointing to the seat next to Harry and asked, "Is anyone here?" Moon was about to answer when another pair of red-haired students came over. Looking at the 3 people talking at the door with the same hair color, Moon guessed that they should be 3 brothers. "Harry, we haven't introduced ourselves to you yet, right? Fred and George Weasley, this is Ron, our little brother." Seeing the 2 red-haired boys leave, Ron also took the opportunity to sit next to Harry. "You are really Harry Potter." From the conversation between the 2 people, Moon guessed that the boy with glasses opposite should be a celebrity, but he did not concentrate on listening to the content of the conversation between the 2 people opposite. Because since Ron appeared at the door of the box, Bengbeng, who had been sleeping in his pocket, seemed to be awakened by something and became restless and wanted to come out of his pocket. After the 2 senior students left, Moon gently took Bengbeng out and put it in the palm of his hand. "Wow, you have one too. Is it a mouse?" Seeing the small animal in Moon's hand, Ron looked over curiously. "It shouldn't be, I call it Bengbeng." "It's not, you see, the nose of a mouse is not that long," Ron said and took out a fat gray mouse from his pocket, but it was sleeping soundly at this time. Bengbeng, who was standing in Moon's hand, was originally very vigilant and looked at the red-haired boy opposite. But when Ron took out a mouse, Bengbeng seemed to be sure of something. His little eyes suddenly widened, and he jumped down and jumped into Ron's hand. "Chee, ah!" Stop it, please give me the follow-up reading, monthly ticket and recommendation ticket from the little wizard. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 8: The Ability to Bounce. Boom sneaked up on the gray mouse while it was sleeping. However, its little claws were not very strong, so it did not cause much damage to the opponent. Seeing that the gray mouse was about to fight back, Moon quickly caught Boom back. Sorry, I don't know why it is like this. Moon had Boom behind him and looked at the frightened and angry Ron sincerely. Scabbers is already very old, Harry was also very surprised why the two pets would fight when they met, but seeing that the gray mouse was not seriously injured, he also helped to persuade them. Ron, I don't think that was Moon's order, was it? Ron reluctantly put Scabbers back into his pocket and sat back down like a sulker. Okay, Ron, don't you want to hear the origin of the scar? According to Hagrid, it was Voldemort. Wait, you said the name of that person. The two people opposite talked about the story of the mysterious man again, and Moon wanted to listen, but he had more important things to do now. Looking at Boom in his hand, who was still angry and wanted to fight again, Moon leaned down and looked at it seriously. Why do you want to bully an old mouse? Look, it's so old that it's about to lose its hair. Moon's voice was very low. The sound of the train and the excited discussion on the other side covered everything. Chi, how could it be? It's old and can only sleep. It can't do anything bad. Chi, okay, but you don't have any evidence, right? Looking at Moon's sincere eyes, Bong Bong turned around helplessly and sat on the leather seat, even avoiding Moon's fingers that were touching it. Moon had no choice but to raise his head, but the two people opposite him were staring at him intently. Were you talking to that Bong Bong just now? Harry asked in surprise. Yes, it did something wrong. I was talking to it. Do you understand animal language? Ron looked at Moon in surprise at this time. I don't understand. It's Bong Bong. It's very smart and can always understand what I mean. Hearing what Moon said, the two stood up unconsciously and looked curiously at the angry Bong Bong sitting there across the small table. It's not his fault. It might be that Scabbers showed up too suddenly and frightened him. Seeing Bong Bong's angry look, Ron suddenly felt a little embarrassed to explain. Chi, what did it say? Seeing Bong Bong turned his head and made a crisp sound, Ron looked at Moon curiously. It said no, thank you for your understanding. It really frightened it. Oh, it's really smart. Isn't it, Harry? After hearing Moon's explanation, Bong Bong turned his head and looked at him in confusion, as if accusing Moon of misinterpreting his words. Seeing that Moon no longer paid attention to him, but participated in the discussion with the two boys opposite, Bong Bong angrily returned to Moon's pocket and zipped it up. During the chat, Moon found that Ron knew the wizarding world very well. He knew everything about the Ministry of Magic, Quidditch, goblins, the 4 colleges of Hogwarts, etc. Moon also knew Harry's identity, the boy who survived a catastrophe, the destined enemy of you-know-who. Looking at Ron's surprised expression when he talked about Harry, Moon found that Harry didn't seem to like this kind of fame. The three of them talked until lunchtime. Harry wanted to thank Moon for his gift, so Moon got another meal on the train. He also got a piece of Ron's sandwich, and the taste of corned beef was very delicious. After collecting a Merlin's chocolate frog card and eating 3 flavors of BB's many flavor beans, Moon felt a wave of sleepiness coming. Last night, he read magic books until late at night out of curiosity, and then went to the zoo early, so he only slept for 2 hours in total. But just as he was about to cover himself with clothes and go to sleep, a crying boy knocked on the compartment door. Excuse me, I want to ask, have you seen my toad? Moon was about to take a nap and ignored him, but Harry and Ron responded that they hadn't. The boy left, and the voices of Harry and Ron on the opposite side also became smaller. The humming and roaring of the train really helped him sleep, and Moon's consciousness soon came back. However, he still failed to fall asleep this time. The door of the compartment opened again, and a loud little girl's voice came in. Have you seen Neville's toad? Moon was completely awake. He felt that if he couldn't find this toad, he might not be able to sleep. Rubbing his face hard, Moon looked at the girl standing at the door. Thick brown curly hair, delicate white face, and bright eyes. After the little girl asked the question, she was attracted by Ron's wand. From her conversation, Moon knew that she was also a freshman. But this little girl was very unusual. Moon found that there was a half frame in the frame above her head. This was different from him, Harry, Ron and Neville standing outside the door. They were all blank. Is there something on my hair? After boasting that she had read all the textbooks, the little girl introduced herself as Hermione Granger, and then noticed Moon's eyes. Nothing. You want to find a toad, right? Yes. Neville lost one. Do you have any ideas? Maybe I can try, Moon said as he opened his jacket pocket and took out Bong. But at this time the little guy was still angry with him, and kept closing his eyes, curled up in Moon's palm. Bong, help me, 1 silver sickle. What is this? So cute, it can find a toad. Seeing Moon talking to the little black ball in his hand, Hermione curiously leaned over. It should be possible. Bong's eyes and nose are very sensitive, but I just made it angry. Really? Then how can I coax it? Everyone around looked over, and Moon spoke to Bong in his palm again. 1. Gold galleon. Bong's eyelids moved. 2. Pieces. As Moon spoke, Bong's eyelids trembled and wanted to open, but it was waiting for the next 3 words. Okay, 2 gold galleons. Bong was completely awake, cried happily, and jumped up directly. Then the little paw stretched out. Moon reluctantly took out 2 golden coins from his pocket. Bengbeng's 2 little eyes were about to burst into little stars. After admiring them for a while, he stuffed them directly into the small pocket in front of his stomach. Okay, can you let it smell the smell of toads? Moon looked at Neville who was standing at the door with a dazed look on his face. My hand is okay. I was just holding left just now. Can I throw it while holding it? Ron asked curiously. Neville's face turned even redder. Moon didn't say anything. He motioned the boy to stretch out his hand. Bengbeng stretched out his long nose and sniffed lightly in Neville's hand, then jumped directly from Moon's hand and ran out of the private room. Come on, follow me. Moon, Hermione, and Neville ran out, while Ron and Harry stayed in the private room. Bengbeng is so amazing, Ron said a little depressed and looked at Scabbers who was sleeping on his legs. But Harry, did you see that? Moon just gave his pet 2 gold galleons. Those are gold galleons. Oh, that should be what Moon earned himself. He sells wood carvings at the entrance of the zoo. Harry actually wanted to go out with him, but Hermione just reminded them that it was time to change into robes, so the 2 of them didn't go out. Moon earns his own money? That's amazing, Ron sighed, and then said a little disappointedly, Mom never allowed us to go to Diagon Alley alone, otherwise I could make some money too. Please read the follow-up, monthly tickets, and recommendation tickets from the Little Wizard. Chapter 9, Bengbeng is different. Speaking of gold galleons, Harry, do you know about Gringotts? The Daily Prophet is full of reports that someone tried to rob the highly guarded underground vault. Really? What happened later? Nothing happened, but I'm curious about another thing in the newspaper, Ron said as he took out his old robes from the suitcase. What's the matter? The newspaper said that a new student at Hogwarts made Gringotts rewrite the rules for exchanging gold galleons. Ron put on his robes and continued, I don't know who is so powerful. The goblins and Gringotts are not easy to deal with. Bengbeng is very good, especially in finding things. Of course, his favorite thing is to find shiny things. But he can find other things. When Moon and his friends caught up with Bengbeng, he had already blocked a golden-backed toad at the corner of the last carriage. Bengbeng pointed his little claws at the other party and turned his head to chirp at Moon, as if urging them to hurry up and not let the toad run away again. Moon just came over and picked up Bengbeng. He would not touch a toad because he did not like to touch sticky and slippery things since he was a child. Hermione also stood aside, only Neville ran over quickly and grabbed the toad. Thank you for helping me find Leif. My name is Neville Longbottom. I will find a way to deal with the 2 gold galleons just now. Oh, no need. In fact, Bengbeng is also my little butler. I won't lose anything if I give him the gold galleons. Bengbeng, who was originally proud of it in his hand, heard Moon talking about gold galleons and quickly covered the small pocket on his stomach. Okay, then thank you Bengbeng. After thanking him, Neville held the toad and walked back, and while walking, he also said to the toad not to let it run around. I think I saw it in Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them. Hermione looked at Bengbeng with interest, and then pondered for a while. But I need to confirm it, and I can give you the answer tomorrow. Are you saying that Bengbeng is a magical animal? Moon also looked at Bengbeng in surprise. Of course, some ordinary animals will help find things, but they definitely won't want money as a reward. Watching Bengbeng crawling back into Moon's pocket, Hermione carefully looked at the boy who was a little taller than her. His jet black hair fell softly on his white forehead. His deep and bright blue eyes seemed to be able to make people fall in love with him with just one glance. His high nose bridge and three-dimensional facial contours. At this moment, a beam of light happened to shine on Moon, making him look like he was out of tune with this world. "I don't know your name yet," Hermione asked boldly. "Moon? Moon Scarlett. Okay, Moon. I advise you to go back to the private room and change into your school uniform. I have just asked the driver in front of us. We should be at school soon." When Moon returned to the private room, it became a mess, and the snacks on the small dining table were scattered all over the floor. "What happened?" Moon looked at Harry. "Nothing, it's just that Malfoy and the others came over just now." Before Harry finished speaking, Hermione, who was standing beside him, had already frowned. "You didn't fight, did you? We haven't even arrived yet and you've caused trouble." "No. It's just that Scabbers had a fight," Ron said, holding Scabbers high up, as if it had done something extraordinary. Hermione wanted to continue asking. But the train was broadcasting. "The train will arrive at Hogwarts in 5 minutes. Please leave your luggage on the train and we will take you to school." "Okay, let's go." Moon still needs to change clothes. Hermione glared at Ron who was talking, and laughed angrily. Listening to Ron and Hermione's angry words, Moon just smiled and went back to the private room, took out the robes in the suitcase and changed. After 4 years of slander from rumors, Moon no longer cared about the quarrels between his peers. What he wanted now was to study magic well. Harry was busy cleaning up the unfinished snacks on the table, but Ron seemed to see something interesting. "Is your school uniform old too?" Ron asked with shining eyes, seeing the worn marks on the cuffs of Moon's robe. "Yes, I bought it at the second-hand robe shop in Diagon Alley." "How is it? Does it fit well?" Although Moon has lived in both worlds, the best clothes are still the current robes. When he put them on, he was a little excited. After all, this is the proof of a little wizard. "Didn't you just give Bengbeng 2 gold galleons? Why don't you buy new clothes?" Ron didn't understand Moon's behavior at all. In his opinion, giving money to pets while wearing old clothes is like agreeing that house elves don't have to work. "Of course it's different. Bengbeng is my best friend," Moon wanted to explain, but the train had stopped. People in the carriage began to line up to leave, and the older students shouted for the freshmen to get off the train quickly. The platform after getting off the train was dark and small, and the lights on the train were needed to see the surrounding situation clearly. First-year students, come here." "Harry, are you okay?" A very tall and strong man appeared on the platform, and he was also the tallest person Moon had ever seen. Harry said a few words to the strong man, and then everyone followed the strong man to a path. For Moon, walking in the woods was not a difficult thing. When he was guarding the hazelnut forest at York Farm, he often had to patrol at night to drive away small animals that stole food. However, Neville, who was with him, walked very hard. Every 3 or 5 steps, he either stepped into a puddle or kicked a stone or a branch. Holding Neville with one hand, listening to the other party constantly thanking him or saying sorry, Moon felt that this boy must have gone through all the hidden traps on this path. After walking the forest path with difficulty, the view in front of him suddenly became wider. Moon guessed that there should be a big river not far away, because he could see the shadows of the stars reflected on the water. There seemed to be a giant beast-like building in the distance, but it was completely dark at this time, and the whole picture could not be seen clearly with a few weak lights on the giant beast. The sturdy man in front shouted for the 4 people to get on a small boat, but his shout was so loud that he woke up Bung, who was sleeping in Moon's pocket, and then a small head popped out of the pocket. "Oh, look, it's a Niffler." Moon was about to plan to get on the boat, but the sturdy man lowered his head in front of him and looked at Bung, who crawled out of his pocket. "First-year students can't bring a Niffler as a pet, don't you know, kid?" Hagrid looked at Bung with interest, and then turned to look at Moon. "Ah, but Bung has been with me for a long time. Its name is Bung, right?" "Hello, Bung, I'm Hagrid." Seeing the finger stretched out by the sturdy man named Hagrid, Bung seemed to understand the meaning of the other party's words, and actually stretched out his little paw to shake it. "Oh, it's really smart, but kid, you can call me Moon, okay? Moon, if you want to keep Bumblebee, remember to ask your dean for a note of adoption consent after the sorting." "Well, maybe it will help." "Okay, thank you Hagrid, you're welcome. Of course, if your dean doesn't let you keep it, you can also come to me." I'll find a good place for Bumblebee in the Forbidden Forest." While Moon and Hagrid were talking, most of the students got on the boats, except for the last two. Hagrid was alone, while Moon walked to the other one. "I saw you with a Weasley kid just now." Moon sat in the last seat of the boat and looked at the thin blonde boy who was talking in front of him. Please give the follow-up reading, monthly ticket, and recommendation ticket in the little wizard's hand. Chapter 10: The Blonde Boy's Threat. Weasley? Who is it? The blonde boy smiled, and the other two tall and fat boys seemed to be guarding him. The one with red hair who was walking with you, Ron, huh? Yes, we just met in the car. The boat slowly sailed away from the shore. Moon answered the other party's question, but his eyes looked curiously into the water. He didn't notice that there was no one rowing or sailing, and the boat just moved forward quietly. Have you seen enough? I'm talking to you. The blonde boy's voice came again, pulling Moon's thoughts back to the boat. What did you say? This is too amazing, isn't it? What an ignorant person. Are you a muggle wizard? The blonde boy sitting at the bow looked at Moon with disgust. That's right, I see. No wonder you're so surprised to see a small boat. The blonde boy's eyes became more impatient. I just said you'd better stay away from Harry Potter and Ron Weasley in the future. Moon turned his head and stared at the blonde boy. He didn't know what conflicts Harry and Ron had with each other, but he didn't plan to participate in these. It was not easy to learn magic. He didn't want to waste time on fighting with his peers. Listen, classmate, you? Moon was about to express his position, and the blonde boy interrupted again. Classmate? Are you kidding? You muggle want to go to Slytherin. When on the train, Moon already knew that Slytherin was one of the branches of Hogwarts. He didn't know why the other party was so sure that he could go to Slytherin, but these had little to do with him. He just wanted to make his position clear now. What about this kid? Boy, I think you don't understand the situation. As soon as Moon said this, the blonde boy opposite him turned cold and winked at the tall and fat boys on both sides. After receiving the instruction, the two tall and fat boys smiled evilly, and then stretched out a hand to grab Moon. The space in the boat was very small, and it was very convenient for the two tall and fat boys to grab Moon. But Moon would not remain indifferent. He saw that the three people on the opposite side had to rely on holding the side of the boat tightly to maintain balance, so he leaned back suddenly. The hands of the two tall and fat boys just touched the corner of Moon's clothes, and they were frightened by the violent shaking of the boat and shrank back. What are you doing? We will fall. The blonde boy held the side of the boat tightly and looked at Moon. I just want you to be obedient. I forgot to tell you that my hometown is by the sea. Moon smiled at the three boys and issued the first warning. Moon did not lie. The southwest of Xilin town is the sea. When Moon was 7 or 8 years old, he played in the sea with children of the same age. It was very easy for him to keep balance on the shaking boat. What are you two doing? Just control him quickly. As if he could not bear Moon's ridicule, the blonde boy issued an order viciously. But before he finished speaking, Moon shook the boat again, and ripples extended from the bottom of the boat to the distance. We are at the deepest part of the Black Lake. Don't shake the boat, or you will fall. Hagrid's voice came from the front. Moon saw the fear in the eyes of the three boys opposite, so he stopped deliberately shaking the boat. You'd better not be assigned to Slytherin. I heard that you have a pet that violates school rules. The blonde boy's voice was still trembling when he spoke. The boat was shaking too much just now. If he hadn't held on tightly, he might have been thrown off. Seeing that the three were honest, Moon didn't care about the unfriendly eyes of the 3 11-year-old boys, but he remembered the name of Slytherin. After landing, Hagrid led everyone to the gate of the castle. Bang, bang, bang. The huge fist knocked on the wooden door of the castle 3 times, and then a witch in emerald green robes walked out. Under the familiar 5-grid strip, Professor McGonagall looked at all the young wizards with a serious expression. Thank you, Hagrid. Let me pick you up here. Everyone began to follow McGonagall forward, walked up the stone stairs and came to a small room. There was a buzzing sound of talking from the door on the right side of the room. Moon guessed that the senior students should be outside. Professor McGonagall began to speak to all the young wizards, Sorting, Gryffindor, Ravenclaw, Hufflepuff, Slytherin, Housecup. While she was speaking, Moon noticed that Professor McGonagall looked at him with surprise, as if she was trying to recall something important. Okay, please keep quiet while you wait. After giving the order, McGonagall came to the back of the line and looked at Moon. I'm very sorry, Mr. Scarlett, I only learned yesterday that you went to Diagon Alley alone. Oh, Professor, you don't have to be like this. In fact, I am very grateful for giving me the opportunity to come to Hogwarts, Moon said and waved his hand quickly. He never felt that McGonagall owed him anything. Seeing the dense wounds on Moon's hands, McGonagall's eyes showed a trace of surprise and pity. She took out her wand and gently slid it across Moon's hands, chanted a spell, and then all the wounds healed miraculously. Okay, stay here and wait for the sorting. McGonagall left after giving instructions, but the little wizards did not quiet down obediently, and even exclaimed. Because more than 20 pearly white, translucent people came out from the wall. It's the ghost of the school, someone in the crowd shouted. Moon also looked at these ghosts curiously, and he found that the ghosts' clothes were the same as the people he saw in Xilin town. Just as he was about to communicate with a fat ghost inside, Professor McGonagall came back. The sorting has begun, follow me. Following the crowd slowly out, Moon found himself in a magical place. A hall without a ceiling. Thousands of candles floated in the air, illuminating the entire hall. Various tableware was placed on 4 long tables, and sitting at the tables were those senior students. These students all have long bars on their heads, but the longest one is only 3 squares. In front of the passage, there is a long table, and the people sitting behind it should be the school professors. Moon found that the long bars on these professors are similar to those on McGonagall, with the shortest 3 squares and the longest 5.5 squares. However, there are still 2 very special ones. The white-bearded headmaster sitting in the middle, Moon already knew his name from Harry's chocolate frog card. Dumbledore, he didn't have a long bar on his head. He remembered that the card introduced him as the recognized greatest wizard of the time, but where is the long bar? Could it be that the other party is not a wizard? This is obviously impossible. As for the other special professor, it was a young male professor wrapped in a purple turban. He actually had 2 long bars on his head. One was 3 squares. The other was translucent and could not be seen clearly. When Moon looked at everyone, the broken hat that Professor McGonagall took out actually sang a song. After appreciating the strange singing, Moon applauded with everyone, and then a freshman was called up. Hannah Abbott. The singing hat only paused for a while and directly called out Hufflepuff. The senior students at each long table were warmly welcoming the freshmen of the college, and Moon was slowly infected by the enthusiasm. Hermione was sorted into Gryffindor. Neville was sorted into Gryffindor. These were 2 friends Moon had just met, and then he found that a blonde boy in the same boat as him had gone up. Slytherin. It was indeed Slytherin, and Moon felt that the sorting hat had cheated. Then it was Harry's turn. The one who had taken the longest time to be sorted by the sorting hat so far, and in the end he was also in Gryffindor. But Harry seemed to be treated differently from the others. When his name was called out, everyone was looking at him. When he was sorted into Gryffindor, he received more cheers and applause than others. After waiting anxiously, Moon's name was finally called. Moon Scarlett, I'm asking for the follow-up reading, monthly tickets, and recommendation tickets from the Little Wizard. Chapter 11 The Sorting Hat's Difficult Decision. Moon had never worn such a dirty and worn hat. Even if he slept under a bridge, he felt that the hats of street vagrants should be much cleaner than the one on his head. Just as he was enduring the rotten smell from the hat on his head, a voice suddenly sounded in Moon's ears. Well, you are really strange. Moon glanced to both sides. Everyone was staring at him. He found that this voice seemed to be heard by only him. The one just now was just choosing between Slytherin and Gryffindor. But what about you? It can be seen that you are very courageous. You can go out on your own and eat for free. It's amazing, you are also very hands-on. You guard such a large forest and you are very honest, you are ambitious too. You actually want to learn all magic. Well, kid, it seems that you can do everything except Ravenclaw. This is really difficult. Moon felt that the hat on his head seemed to judge the sorting based on what he had done in the past. But his little ambition was hidden deep in his heart and would be discovered anyway. Moon didn't let the sorting hat wait too long. When he knew that he was suitable for 3 colleges, he made a decisive choice. Then Gryffindor. Moon didn't know what other colleges were like, but at the long table in Gryffindor, he had received several concerned eyes, and his hands that had no longer been cut. Yes, that's right. Sometimes choice is more important than anything else, kid. The sorting hat gave Moon an encouraging answer, and then announced loudly in the hall. Then Gryffindor. Moon also received cheers and applause. Although most of the people at the long table didn't know him, he had a feeling of finding a kindred spirit. Come and sit here. I knew you would come with me. Harry waved to him, and Moon smiled and thanked him and sat next to him. Where were you just now? We couldn't wait for you on the ship, so we had to, Harry said, looking at Hermione who was sitting opposite him. To be honest, he didn't have much of a good impression of this arrogant little girl. Hagrid and I talked for a while just now, and then I got on Malfoy's ship. After hearing this, Harry turned his head and looked at Malfoy who was sitting at the Slytherin table. You didn't have a conflict, did you? I mean, Ron's rant just scared him. After hearing what Harry said, Moon finally understood why Malfoy misunderstood him. It turned out that they were the ones fighting in the carriage. Conflict? Of course not. While Moon was talking to Harry, the Sorting Hat had already sorted Ron into Gryffindor, and he sat on the other side of Harry. The last student was sorted into Slytherin, and then Professor McGonagall took the Sorting Hat and left. At this time, Dumbledore stood up. Seeing the cheerful smile on his wrinkled face, you can tell that he was very happy. Welcome everyone to Hogwarts to start a new school year. Before the banquet begins, I want to say a few words. Moon's hands were controlling Boom at this time, because the silverware on the dining table was really too bright, which was simply attracting Boom to commit crimes. Hearing that Dumbledore was going to speak, Moon hoped that the speech would not be too long. As long as the banquet began, Boom would not be so noticeable in the chaos. That is, idiot, dregs, crybaby, twist, thank you all. This was the most beautiful words Moon had heard tonight, but he couldn't applaud. But no one noticed him, because there were already all kinds of delicious food on the table. Moon had never seen so much food before. Even the zoo's employee cafeteria would not prepare so much at once, especially some of the meat inside, which looked very appetizing. While Moon was distracted, Bengbeng had already crawled out of his pocket. He first jumped onto the table and stared at a silver fork next to Moon. He quickly crawled over and put the silver fork into the pocket in front of his belly, but soon, the silver fork appeared on the table again. Bengbeng opened his small pocket and looked inside curiously, then looked up at the silver fork, and looked back and forth several times before he was sure that it was the same fork. He tried several times in disbelief, including those golden plates, but failed. The tableware here is enchanted and cannot be taken away, but as a prefect, I still have to remind you that it is not a good choice to keep the Niffler as a pet. Sitting opposite Moon was also a young red-haired wizard. He and Hermione next to him witnessed all of Bong's little actions just now. I didn't know it was a Niffler at first, and Hagrid reminded me to ask the dean for a certificate, Moon hurriedly explained. Of course, this is necessary. Professor McGonagall pays great attention to school rules, but don't worry, she still cares about the students of her college. The wizard who claimed to be a prefect then talked to Hermione about learning transfiguration. Moon couldn't get a word in at all because he had just bought those textbooks yesterday. After trying more than a dozen times, Bong finally recognized the reality and sat down at the dining table listlessly. Moon carefully held it on his lap, then forked a small piece of steak for it. Watching Bong start eating, Moon also listened to the conversation of everyone at the table with peace of mind. A ghost who called himself Sir Nicholas happened to float to the table. Many people greeted him, and he even opened his head. Moon was quite fond of this Sir Ghost, because he looked like the aristocratic clothes that the old people in Xilin town often talked about. It's nice to meet you, Sir Nicholas. Moon looked at the ghost with only a head exposed on the plate and greeted him very politely. Look, this is the etiquette that a noble should have. You should all learn from him and stop calling him Brainless Nick. After the ghost said this, he stretched out his hand and shook it with Moon. However, after Moon touched the other party, he immediately pulled his hand back. He had never felt such a cold feeling, which was colder than when he went fishing in the river in winter. Oh, it may not feel good, but it doesn't matter. The great Sir Nicholas is here to pay his respects. The ghost bowed to Moon, and then his head drooped again. Moon was shocked by this scene. The people around laughed, and Sir Nicholas left happily. Moon followed his figure to the direction of the professors. McGonagall was talking to Dumbledore at the long table. They looked over here from time to time. Moon thought they should be looking at Harry. After all, this boy seemed to be the focus everywhere. Moon retracted his gaze and concentrated on the food on the table, and gave Bengbeng a small piece of lamb chop. At this time, Harry suddenly screamed with his head covered, and then asked the name of a professor. Moon also listened carefully to the prefect's explanation that it was Professor Quirrell and Professor Snape who taught potions. Moon found that Professor Snape, who Harry was concerned about, was the one with the longest wizard line, and he was half a line longer than Professor McGonagall. Seeing that this professor was still very young, Moon knew that the strength of wizards seemed to have no necessary relationship with age. When the dinner was over and all the food disappeared, Dumbledore stood up again and announced a few things. The Forbidden Forest cannot be entered. Magic cannot be cast in the corridor. Quidditch application selection. The corridor on the right of the 4th floor cannot be entered either. Moon engraved all the forbidden things deeply in his mind. He knew that the most important thing for him now was to learn magic, not to explore in the castle. Chapter 12 Mag's Worry. Moon thought Dumbledore's speech would be the last part of the dinner, but he didn't expect to sing the school song. When Dumbledore announced that he would sing the school song, Moon found that the expressions of the professors on the stage became unnatural, especially the potion professor that Harry asked about. Moon was originally nervous that he didn't know the lyrics, but then he found that this was completely unnecessary, because golden ribbons had already floated out of Dumbledore's wand. These ribbons danced gracefully in the air, and finally slowly turned into lyrics. Everyone chooses the tune they like. This is too casual, Moon thought so. Then he heard what might be the most chaotic school song performance in history. Learning magic at Hogwarts will definitely not be boring. This is Moon's first thought after singing the school song. Because a very short school song was sung in hundreds of tunes by teachers and students throughout the school. Moon also joined the chorus, and he used the tune of a children's song in Xilin. Although the school song is very chaotic, Moon likes the first 2 sentences very much. Hogwarts, 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 Hogwarts. Please teach us knowledge. Whether we are bald old men or children with injured knees, the magical dinner is finally over. After Dumbledore announced that they could go back to their dormitories, the prefect stood up first to maintain order and led the freshmen out of the hall. It was at this time that Moon learned that the prefect of Gryffindor was Percy Weasley, Ron's brother. However, this prefect seemed to care about his identity very much, and he would reveal his identity as a prefect every 5 sentences. Moon didn't know if the other party did it on purpose, but Ron, who was following behind, showed a very disgusted expression. Moon didn't care about these trivial matters. He just wanted to go back to the dormitory as soon as possible and have a good sleep. He read until very late last night, and his lunch break was also disturbed, causing his eyelids to fight all the time. On the way, they also met a ghost named Peeves. Percy mentioned the name of the Bloody Baron to scare the other party away. Neville was hit by the cane dropped by Peeves again. Moon was more and more sure that this little wizard with a toad might have been taken care of by the god of bad luck. After entering the common room with the password Dragonscum, they were led to their respective dormitories before they had time to observe. This was a room for 5 people, with a 4-poster bed covered with crimson curtains. Moon was assigned a position against the wall, next to Harry's bed. Moon opened the suitcase and took out the tree nest cabin first. Bounce has now adapted to the small hollow carved bed in the cabin, and it is difficult to fall asleep once it leaves. What is this? Ron was still talking to everyone about the rich dinner tonight, and came over curiously after seeing the cabin. Bounce's house. Moon held it up and showed it to the others who gathered around. There were 5 people in the room now: Harry, Ron, Neville, Seamus and Moon. Each of them lowered their heads and looked hard at the scene in the cabin. Bed, cabinet, blanket, pillow, and even a painting of gold galleons hanging on the wall. This is really exquisite. Did you buy it in London? Seamus moved a small window on the wooden house and said enviously. It must be worth a lot of money. Ron nodded in agreement. I carved it myself. After everyone finished looking at it, Moon put the wooden house on the head of his bed. You carved it yourself? How is it possible? It's more exquisite than the toy models I have seen. Seamus looked at Moon suspiciously. Moon's craftsmanship is very good. I saw him at the entrance of the zoo. He also gave me a wooden sword, Harry said as he took out a knight's wooden sword from the suitcase, and several little boys surrounded it again. The small wooden sword was only the size of a palm. It was carved by Moon according to the stone statue in the park. The most complicated pattern on it was a few roses carved on the hilt. He only carved it because he heard that the national flower of the United Kingdom was the rose. The few wooden flowers did not attract much attention, but Ron looked at the tree house with envy for several times. He just saw that Neville's toad had a metal box, and his Scabbers was not bad either, and could sleep in the big bed with him. The young wizards introduced themselves and went to bed. Moon quietly climbed to the window of the tree house and said goodnight. Moon was about to go to bed after receiving the response, but Ron suddenly called out. Go away, Scabbers. Don't chew my sheets. Moon turned over and continued to sleep facing the window. After the dinner, McGonagall found Dumbledore again. The two most mysterious children were sorted into Gryffindor tonight, and she was still a little worried. Dumbledore, is this really okay? What? The white-bearded headmaster looked at his most capable assistant in confusion. These two children, Harry and Mr. Scarlett, especially Mr. Scarlett, he has worn the sorting hat longer than Harry. McGonagall's expression was extremely serious, as if the children she was talking about brought her a lot of pressure. But he didn't break your record, did he? Dumbledore spoke very steadily, and the words coming out of his mouth were also very soothing. But, well, Minerva, since the sorting hat has already sorted him into Gryffindor, I think Hogwarts must accept him. Dumbledore saw that McGonagall's expression did not relax, and turned to mention another interesting thing. The little wizard mentioned in the Daily Prophet should be Mr. Scarlett. Yes, Tom from the Leaky Cauldron sent me a letter yesterday, and I realized that I had forgotten about Mr. Scarlett. I don't even know where he made so much money, and he also asked Gringotts to change the rules for exchanging gold galleons. I think this should not be simple. Listening to McGonagall's description, Dumbledore nodded and said, yes, the child's hands are all injured. I don't know how he has been through this month. McGonagall felt guilty towards Moon when she mentioned this. It's my fault, headmaster. No, Minerva, it's because I paid too much attention to that matter that Mr. Scarlett's road to Hogwarts was full of challenges, but this just proves to us that this child is very brave and smart, isn't it? An 11-year-old little wizard can earn 100 gold galleons in 3 months, dare to go to Diagon Alley alone, and even inexplicably make Gringotts change the exchange rules. In the past, McGonagall would never dare to think about this. Is he really suitable for Gryffindor? McGonagall pondered. Okay, Minerva, you are tired enough, take a good rest tonight, you still have to teach the little wizards tomorrow. Seeing that McGonagall had figured it out, Dumbledore smiled and watched her leave. When the entire headmaster's office was quiet, Dumbledore suddenly walked to the window, looked in the direction of the Gryffindor dormitory, and said a sentence. Welcome to Hogwarts. This was the best night Moon slept. The soft mattress, comfortable blanket, and fluffy pillows made his body soft. When sleeping, the roar of the four-wheeled vehicle can no longer be heard. Only in the morning can the crisp chirping of birds be heard faintly. It may be because it is the first day of school. Even though Moon was very sleepy last night, he woke up very early in the morning. Listening to the even breathing of Bengbeng in the tree nest wooden house, Moon quickly put on his clothes and walked out of the dormitory with everyone. In the common room, Percy was already waiting for them. After handing each person a schedule for the school year, they went to the auditorium together. The variety of breakfast was very rich. Moon felt that Hogwarts must have a lot of chefs and they were very good. When are you going to find Professor McGonagall? If others find Bengbeng, Gryffindor will probably lose points. Hermione, who was sitting opposite, ate a piece of pumpkin pie and looked at Moon very seriously. Thank you for reminding me. I saw that there is only one history of magic in the morning, so I planned to find Professor McGonagall after class. Seeing that Moon did not forget to issue a certificate for Bengbeng, Hermione was obviously relieved. Moon ate a few mouthfuls in a hurry, then walked back with a small portion of bread. He had to prepare some breakfast for Bengbeng as well. But as soon as he left, a large group of owls appeared in the auditorium, bringing packages, letters and a Daily Prophet that the students needed. Chapter 13 Who Changed the Rules of Gringotts? After seeing the Daily Prophet ordered by his friend Lee, the red-haired George came to Harry holding the newspaper. Did you do this, Harry? I knew that you know who couldn't defeat you, and neither could the goblins from Gringotts. Harry was eating a pumpkin pie. He had just envied other students who received packages, but he had nothing. But on second thought, this was also good. Ever since he followed Hagrid to the Leaky Cauldron, Harry knew how famous he was. But he really didn't want this kind of fame. After leaving the dormitory this morning, many people pointed at him along the way, and some people even walked back and forth beside him just to see the scar on his forehead. And now this tranquility was broken by George. Harry looked at the first page of the newspaper, which still recorded the theft of Gringotts by a mysterious wizard. Harry had heard Ron talk about this on the train. He didn't know why the Daily Prophet would publish one thing in a row. Was there nothing worth recording in the wizarding world? Looking in the direction of George's finger, a big headline appeared on the second page of the newspaper. Gringotts Millennium Rule Change. It's because of the new students at Hogwarts Gringotts no longer accepts Muggle pennies. Harry knew that it couldn't be him, because Uncle Vernon never gave him a penny. After he went to Gringotts, Harry knew that he no longer had to worry about money in the wizarding world. "It's not me, I don't have it." Fred also came over at this time and patted his shoulder excitedly. "Don't be modest, Harry, you are a big celebrity now, and those goblins are not popular to begin with." Harry didn't know how to explain it. He really hated being famous now. "Okay, you two, the new students have to go to class, don't disturb them." Percy's voice came from the other end of the dining table. "Oh, isn't this the prefect, Percy?" "Yes, follow the prefect's instructions." George and Fred left with a smile, and Percy led the new students to the history of magic classroom with a sullen face. "Harry, is it really not you?" Ron was a little skeptical now. "Of course not." Moon cherished this opportunity to learn magic very much. Even though the professor's voice on the stage was very hypnotic, he listened very seriously. Professor Binns should be the oldest professor at Hogwarts, of course. This is also due to his age and ghost age. It may be because the professor was too old when he became a ghost, which caused him to speak with a heavy breath like an old man. It is precisely this white noise effect that made the whole class. Moon looked around and found that only Hermione could hold on. Magic was first recorded by ancient Egyptian wizards 3,000 years ago. As for when it was born, it is still unknown. In the first magic history class, Moon roughly understood the development process of the entire wizarding society 3,000 years ago. The first recorded spell appeared in ancient Egypt. This was discovered by Gringotts. At that time, wizards paid great attention to spells and curses, and even used magic in huge tombs built after death. Later, magic spread out of Egypt, and wizards in Europe found that with the help of some media, they could not only improve the strength of wizards, but also improve the speed and power of casting spells. Thus, various strange magic media were born, from meteorites to scepters, from dance to gestures, from animals to trees. Magic media have undergone thousands of years of evolution. Until 382 BC, the Ollivander family began to make wands. Since then, wands have gradually replaced other items and become the most important medium for European wizards to cast spells. In just the first class, Moon knew the vastness of the magic world, and even this knowledge helped him expand the world map in his mind. It turns out that there is not only Britain here, but also Egypt, Arabia, France, and the Mediterranean. The homework left by Professor Binns after the first class was, preview the magic texts of ancient Egypt. When Professor Binns talked about homework, most of the people who fell asleep in class woke up instantly, which made Moon feel that the 4 words homework seemed to be more useful than the alarm clock he picked up. After class, he went to the auditorium to eat with everyone. During the whole meal, Hermione kept staring at him, which made Moon lose the desire to appreciate food for the first time. Moon now thinks that Hermione can take over Percy's baton and become a prefect in the 5th grade. She takes school rules too seriously. It was not until Moon left the hall early with the food that Hermione breathed a sigh of relief. She really didn't want Gryffindor to be deducted points on the first day of school. The lunch break was very sufficient. After class at 11 o'clock, there would be a herbology class at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Moon took the bread back to the dormitory while everyone was eating. He wanted to tell Bengbeng alone. "You will see Professor McGonagall later. Don't take anything from her. Do you understand?" Moon tore off a small piece of bread and handed it to Bengbeng, looking very serious. "No, but if you really take it, I will have to put you in the Forbidden Forest. There are more than a dozen big black dogs there." "Shishi, it doesn't matter if you can dig holes, big black dogs can." Moon didn't know how to persuade Bengbeng to give up his collecting habit this time. He was about to say that big black dogs can also dig holes, but his eyes swept across Scabbers sleeping on Ron's bed. "There are 100 big gray mice like Scabbers in the Forbidden Forest." "Shishi." Bengbeng's little eyes widened. He tilted his head to look at the sleeping Scabbers, and then looked at Moon. "Of course it's true, and they fight very well." Bengbeng must have believed it, because he refused to eat the bread that was handed to him. Okay, it's a deal. Let's go see Professor McGonagall first and eat bread when we come back." Professor McGonagall's office is on the 2nd floor of the teaching building. The space here is not big, and there are many books neatly placed on the 2 bookshelves. "You mean this Niffler is your pet?" McGonagall's eyes were very serious, and her eyes were fixed on the Niffler standing on the desk. "To be precise, it's not a pet, Professor, it's my best friend." Moon's eyes were full of pleading. In the 3 months since he came to this strange world, Bengbeng has been with him the most. If he lets him leave at this time, he will be very reluctant. The admission notice clearly states that you can bring an owl, a cat or a toad, but magical animals like the Niffler are not included. McGonagall's eyes became solemn, and then her eyes caught a glimpse of the thread on Moon's old robe, and she sighed helplessly. Well, if this Niffler can refrain from stealing, taking away other students' valuables, I will allow it to move around in the castle. Bengbeng is fine, Professor, you see it's very stable now, not moving at all, Moon said excitedly, pointing at Bengbeng as if he had grabbed a life-saving straw. Really? This needs to be verified, McGonagall said as she pulled out her wand from her sleeve and waved it. The trophy is flying. A platinum trophy with a red, white and blue ribbon flew from the bookshelf to Professor McGonagall's hands. There was a sentence engraved on the base of the trophy, the most promising newcomer award for contemporary transfiguration. Professor McGonagall placed the trophy on the desk, and the sunlight shone on it through the window, making the trophy, which had been wiped very clean, emit a dazzling light. Creak creak Bengbeng's little paws rubbed against the disc a little. Chapter 14, One Field. Bengbeng kept his promise to Moon. Even though he really liked the trophy that was much taller than his body and sparkling, he tried to control his little paws that wanted to get close. Moon trusted Bengbeng very much. He didn't look at the fierce ideological struggle on the table, but kept looking at the wizard bar above McGonagall's head. The name of this bar was just thought of by Moon this morning, because other species besides wizards would not have bars, even magical creatures. When Professor McGonagall took out her wand, Moon found that the wizard bar above her head had actually risen by half a bar. Very good, Mr. Scarlett, your friend passed my test. Seeing that Bengbeng did not approach the trophy but took a step back, McGonagall finally nodded and made a judgment. Great job, Bengbeng. Moon also retracted his gaze and happily picked up Bengbeng from the desk. Bengbeng also cried softly, and then climbed onto Moon's shoulder, but his eyes would still reluctantly glance at the trophy. Okay, Mr. Scarlett, I hope your friend will keep it in the future. Professor McGonagall had already picked up a quill and wrote a certificate. Seeing that Moon was still chatting with the sniff, she interrupted him and handed him the parchment. After Moon took it, he quickly glanced at it. Allow Mr. Moon Scarlett to live with the sniff, bounce, in Hogwarts Castle until graduation. Vice Principal, Minerva McGonagall. After thanking Professor McGonagall, Moon happily left the office with bounce. At the door of the common room, he met Neville. This unlucky little wizard was staring blankly at the portrait of the fat lady. Neville, why don't you go in, dragon scum? Seeing the door of the common room open, Neville smiled with relief. I just forgot the password, so I'm waiting to see if anyone comes back, Neville said and looked at Bounce on Moon's shoulder. Hermione told me, did you go to find Professor McGonagall? Bumble won't be driven away, right? No, Professor McGonagall agreed that Bumble can live in the castle, Moon said, shaking the parchment in his hand. Bumble also happily called to Neville at this time. Chi, what did it say? Knowing that Moon could understand Bumble's words, Neville turned around and asked. It said that it can help you find Rafik in the future. Thank you, Bumble. Actually, Rafik. Hey, where's Rafik? Where did Rafik go? The process of finding Rafik this time was very simple. In the fireplace of the common room, this golden-backed toad was just a little bit away from becoming a delicious barbecue. After taking a 1-hour lunch break in the dormitory, it was exactly 1:30 in the afternoon. Moon packed up and came to the classroom of the herbology class. This is a whole row of greenhouses located at the back of the castle. They took classes with the Hufflepuff freshmen. Outside the greenhouse, they were admonished by Professor Sprout for a long time. You must not touch any plants, you must not play around in the greenhouse, you must not sneak into the greenhouse at the back. Perhaps Professor Sprout's rules worked. Even though all the little wizards were very curious, no one touched the plants in the pots. Do you see the plant with white flowers in front of you? This is a daffodil. Its flowers are very beautiful, right? Professor Sprout picked up a pot of plants from the wooden rack and began to explain. But only the rhizome of this flower can be used as a herb. Professor Sprout was very proficient in herbs. She not only explained the cultivation and medicinal use of daffodils, but also told a Greek myth about daffodils. Moon not only learned about daffodils in the greenhouse, but also finally figured out the role of dragon skin gloves. As the most expensive school supplies, Moon was impressed by it. Fire dragon skin has a very high anti-magic property. If you want to cast a spell on a fire dragon, you must have 7 or 8 wizards to work together to make it work. Professor Sprout raised the fire dragon skin gloves in his hand and continued. So, before you come into contact with unknown things, it's best to bring it with you, especially in herbology and potions. Professor Sprout's teaching was very good, but some young wizards still couldn't help wanting to go outside because the smell in the greenhouse was really bad. Moon didn't care. When he was working on the farm, he often helped people fertilize. In comparison, the smell in the greenhouse was already very light. But the reason he didn't want to leave was not because of this, but because he found that Professor Sprout's wizard bar had also changed in a short period of time. When she explained the herbal plants, the wizard bar that was originally 5 grids instantly increased by half a grid, just like the change that happened when Professor McGonagall picked up the wand. Moon, get out of class is over. Oh, here I come. At 4 o'clock in the afternoon, the first day of wizard courses had all ended. The professors of the 2 courses did not leave too much homework, but just asked them to preview the content of the next class. After dinner, Moon thought about today's new discoveries. If the wizard bar represents the strength of the wizard, and the wand can provide a strength bonus to the wizard, then why does the daffodil have this effect? Professor Sprout is responsible for teaching the content of herbology, which means that she is very accomplished in herbology. This is probably the field of magic that she is good at. These are all Moon's conjectures. It is easy to verify them. Tomorrow morning is a herbology class, and in the afternoon there will be a spell class in transfiguration. Professor Flitwick, who teaches spells, and Professor McGonagall, who teaches transfiguration, will definitely use their wands to perform their best magic. It will be clear at that time. After thinking about this clearly, Moon turned around and picked up the textbook to go to the common room. His classmates were here to share their first day's experience. Ron was teaching Harry to play a kind of wizard chess. The chess pieces of wizard chess are very strange. They are all alive. Commanding them is like commanding a real army. That's why you need to be careful when playing wizard chess, because every time you make a wrong move, the chess pieces will yell at you, and even wave their weapons to stab you. Harry retracted his hand again. The one who stabbed him just now was a soldier on horseback. Want to play around, Moon? Ron ate Harry's old general directly, and then looked at Moon very enthusiastically. No, I'll preview the content of the next class first. Moon took the book and walked to the other side of the table, where Hermione was reading silently. Why are you like this? It's only the first day of school. Ron looked at Moon leaving in confusion, and then turned to look at Harry hopefully. Another round. Moon was able to determine that the wizard bar represented the wizard's magical strength, and Hermione was the most special among the freshmen. The only half-grid. Moon also learned from her a way to improve magical strength, reading. Have you just started reading the first chapter? Hermione, who was sitting opposite, glanced at the book in Moon's hand. As the only 2 freshmen who were still reading, she was also a little curious about Moon's learning progress. I have memorized all these books, of course. I just hope it will be useful. Memorized all. Are you sure? Yes. Today I also went to the library to borrow Magic Enlightenment, research on the development of modern witchcraft, and major discoveries in modern magic. Moon couldn't listen anymore. He finally understood why Ron hated Hermione. Moon didn't remember what the little witch said next, because he had focused all his attention on the book. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 15 Moon's Bonus Points. Moon had never seen a peer who loved to study as much as Hermione. He even felt that Hermione read more books than all other peers combined. This was probably the reason why Hermione had half a magic bar more than others. Moon felt that his guess made some sense, so he now wanted to try to increase his magic power through reading. Although he was not a fast reader and needed to ask others about some words in the book, Moon had a very good memory and never asked the same word a second time. Just like when he first went to the hazelnut forest as a guard, he remembered the route of the 100-acre woodland after walking it once. After asking Hermione the meaning of 7 words, Moon finally finished reading a chapter of the history of magic, while Hermione had finished reading 5 chapters of research on the development of modern witchcraft at the same time. The next morning, Moon gave the note issued by Professor McGonagall to Bengbeng, repeatedly telling it not to take anyone's things. As a best friend, Moon didn't want Bengbeng to stay in the dormitory every day. It should play in the castle, on the grass outside, and even by the Black Lake. Of course, you can't go to the Forbidden Forest. Percy said it's dangerous there. After getting a positive answer from Bung, Moon left the dormitory with everyone at ease. I think Bung is so smart. It seems to understand everything you say, Harry said with a little envy as he walked beside Moon. That's right, but I just hope it doesn't make any trouble in the castle, Moon replied casually. I don't think so. It's probably that you can understand what Bung says, Moon. Ron interrupted at this time. By the way, have you communicated with other magical animals? No, Moon never thought that he would have the talent to communicate with magical animals, but he knew that Ron knew a lot about many things in the magic world, so there must be some reason for him to say that. Do I really have this ability? Moon was daydreaming when Ron's voice came from the side again. If you want to experiment with this ability, you can only wait until your 3rd year, when we will have the Care of Magical Creatures class. Ron walked down a flight of stairs and continued. George and Fred said this class is very safe, but you know, they often say the opposite. The 3 of them chatted as they came to the Great Hall. Moon discovered that Hermione was reading even during meal times. And the book in her hand was the same big book Hogwarts, a history of the school that she had read last night. Judging from the thickness of the book, she had already finished 2/3 of the book, which took only 1 day. In the morning's herbology class, Moon and his group were still taken to yesterday's greenhouse. However, today was no longer a study tour, but a hands-on treatment of the rhizomes of daffodils. The leaves need to be cleaned, Justin. Although daffodils are beautiful, they must be cut off. Miss Ranger, well done, Neville Longbottom, right? But it would be best if there was less soil on the roots of the flowers. Oh, very perfect. The flowers are cut neatly, the leaves are cleanly processed, and the flower stems are not damaged. The roots are intact and there is almost no soil. As long as they are dried, they can be used directly for medicine. Professor Sprout held up a processed daffodil to show the people around him. This is simply a standard daffodil herb. I have to give Gryffindor 5 points, Mr. Moon. Scarlett, the little wizards around cast envious eyes. Everyone already knew that the college score was very important and it was related to the honor of the college. But a freshman who had just enrolled received a reward on the 2nd day of class, which still surprised the little wizards. Well done, Moon. Harry gently touched Moon's shoulder and said in a low voice. Yes, you should be the first freshman to be awarded credits this school year. Ron glanced at Hermione's direction intentionally or unintentionally while speaking, as if he was showing off something. Moon was also surprised. He had never thought that his experience working at York Farm could actually get extra points. This gave him the illusion that magic was not actually very difficult. However, the reality soon overturned Moon's cognition. In the first spell class in the afternoon, the short Professor Flitwick stood on a pile of textbooks and explained the relationship between spells and magic. If you want to cast magic, you must master spells. When chanting spells, you must not only pay attention to the scale, pauses, and tone, but most importantly, you must concentrate on chanting the spell. Professor Flitwick took out his wand and said. At the same time, we must also pay attention to the technique, angle, and strength of waving the wand, avoid shaking, and ensure that the movement is smooth and the speed is moderate. Just like this, fluorescent flash, a very bright light spot appeared on Professor Flitwick's wand, and the originally dim classroom suddenly seemed to be directly illuminated by the sun. The Muggle wizards all exclaimed, except Hermione. Moon was also very surprised, but he was more concerned about the wizard bar on Professor Flitwick's head. With the dual blessing of the wand and the spell, Professor Flitwick's wizard bar has increased from 5 to 6. This is the longest wizard bar Moon has seen so far. Of course, this is based on the fact that Moon cannot see Dumbledore's wizard bar and has not yet taken a potion class. Moon clearly remembers that at the welcome dinner for freshmen, the potion professor with a resolute face and slicked hair had the longest wizard bar at that time. After Professor Flitwick finished his explanation, he began to let the students practice the simplest illumination spell. Hermione succeeded in just one use, and she also won 5 points for Gryffindor. After Professor Flitwick just announced the extra points, Hermione turned her head and looked at Moon behind him. The technique, angle, and strength are all very good, Mr. Scarlett, but you didn't pronounce the spell scale correctly. Moon has tried his best, but these difficult spells are indeed very difficult to pronounce. Don't be nervous, Mr. Longbottom. You can practice spells and wand techniques separately. Oh, Harry Potter, I believe you can do it. Just practice more times, right, Mr. Weasley, practice carefully. Professor Flitwick was very careful. He gave comments to each student seriously, but when the whole class was over, only Hermione could maintain the illumination charm for 10 minutes. Moon just made the wand flash for a moment, and then never let it light up again. I think you need to practice pronunciation. Your spoken English is very rusty, not like a native British person at all. When leaving the classroom, Hermione packed up her textbooks while pointing Moon behind her. Indeed. I came from the UK, no wonder. In fact, there is a book, Modern Magical Pronunciation Table, in the library, the one written by Jemima Browning. You'd better take a closer look. Moon's expression was stunned. He was still a little uncomfortable with Hermione's preaching style help. Thank you, you're welcome. Hermione raised her proud little head and walked out of the classroom door. Ron and Harry came over at this time. Don't mind it, Moon. Ron watched Hermione leave before speaking. I knew on the train that she was very unpopular. Moon and Harry looked at each other indifferently. Although he would not say bad things about people behind their backs, he had to admit that Ron's point of view made some sense. However, Moon's attention was not on the tone of Hermione's voice. He had been called a half-baked inspiration person in Xilin for more than 4 years and had long been accustomed to it. He was curious about how this little girl finished reading so many books. Modern Magical Pronunciation Table. This sounds like another big book. Hermione's spell pronunciation is so standard, and she still remembers the author. She wouldn't have memorized this book as well. I'm asking for the follow-up reading, monthly tickets, and recommendation tickets in the hands of the little wizard. Chapter 16. Making a Wand. The second class in the afternoon was Transfiguration. I don't know if it was because the vice president had to strictly maintain school discipline, but Professor McGonagall's expression became very serious as soon as she started class. Transfiguration is the most complicated and dangerous magic of all the courses you have learned at Hogwarts. Professor McGonagall looked around and looked at everyone with sharp eyes. If anyone makes trouble in my class, I will ask him to leave and never let him come in again. I have warned you. The effect of this sentence was surprisingly good. All the little wizards sat upright and no one dared to speak in class. However, the serious atmosphere did not last forever. When Professor McGonagall turned the desk into a pig and then changed it back, all the little wizards exclaimed, and so did Moon. Especially when she saw Professor McGonagall holding the magic wand and reciting the spell, the wizard bar above her head instantly turned into 6 squares. Okay, it takes a long time to practice to turn an object into an animal. You only need to master turning a match into a needle this week. Professor McGonagall said the basic rules of transfiguration while handing out a match to each student. She didn't speak very fast, but it was still a bit difficult for Moon to remember the main points of what she said. Because he could read some words but couldn't write them. Even if these words were on the tip of his tongue, his brain just didn't know whether the first letter should be P or B. Listening to the rustling sound of his deskmate taking notes, Moon consciously put down his quill and began to practice turning matches into needles according to the spells in the Beginner's Guide to Transfiguration. Hermione turned her head to look at Moon, then pouted and continued to copy. When the whole class was over, only Hermione had completed the magic of turning matches into needles. Moon also completed half of it. Match head plus needle dip. When the bell rang for the end of get out of class, Moon refused Harry and Ron's invitation to go to the hall for dinner, and looked at Hermione. Hermione, can you lend me your notes to copy? Why didn't you write in class? Because some words were on the tip of my tongue, but I just couldn't write them. You can't read. Hermione looked at him in surprise. She felt that Moon's foundation was very poor last night, but she didn't expect it to be so poor. It's not that I don't know them. At least I know some common words. Okay, then it seems that the Modern Magic Pronunciation Table is not enough. You also need a copy of the Oxford Reading Tree. Can this be found in the library? No, this is the textbook I used when I was in elementary school. After learning that Moon had no way to buy books outside the school, Hermione agreed to lend her old textbooks. Moon didn't mind reading more books, especially since these books could help him learn magic quickly. Go to class and read books carefully. These are what Moon must do in this world, but there is still a problem that has been bothering him. What should I do after returning to Xilin? There is no magic wand there. Can the magic I learned still be used in Xilin? Now he only has an unskilled illumination spell and an incomplete transfiguration. But these all require a magic wand. This problem did not bother Moon for a long time. Just after coming to the library, He found a solution to the problem. No wonder there is a saying in Xilin, books are the wisest advisors and the most patient teachers. When Moon saw thousands of bookshelves standing in front of him, his heart was shaken. The bookshelves here are probably more than the trees in the hazelnut forest he guards, and the number of books is probably more than the annual production of hazelnuts. Shocking, right? I've read in books that the collection of books here is the largest in the entire wizarding world, Hermione whispered in Moon's ear. There should be magic here, right? Moon asked curiously, seeing that the space inside the library is much larger than what is seen outside. No noises are allowed in the library. As soon as Moon finished speaking, a witch in a black robe, with a serious face and a hook nose quickly came over. You can't damage the books, and you can't go to the restricted book area. Seeing that Moon was a freshman, the librarian Madame Pants immediately reminded him again. Moon covered his mouth and nodded to show that he knew, and then browsed in the public library area. Here Moon found many books about wands, but not many of them explained how to make wands. Regarding wands, the thing Moon remembered most clearly was what Ollivander said. It is the one that chooses the wizard. But after learning the history of magic, Moon knew that the wand was not born, it was also made by wizards. Although he did not understand what Ollivander meant, it did not hinder his determination to make a wand. Yes, the way to solve the problem is to make a wand. In this way, he can experiment in Xilin to see if the magic learned in Hogwarts can be used. Moon knew that this process was difficult, especially since he knew nothing about making a wand. But the magic knowledge in the library gave him the courage to dream. When Moon came to the reading area with modern magic pronunciation table and magic wand making and maintenance, Hermione's little face showed a questioning expression. Why take this book? Hermione gently pointed to magic wand making and maintenance. Well, I think I need to take a look. Didn't Professor Flitwick say that if you want to cast magic, it's best to establish a close relationship with a wand, so that you can be handy? Moon explained very sincerely, but Hermione's reaction was different from others. She tilted her head and thought for a while, then turned and walked towards the book collection area. You make sense. I want to borrow a copy too. The author of Making and Maintaining Wands is named Ollivander. Moon guessed that this should be the grandfather of the wand shop owner, because the book was published 200 years ago. The book records in detail the process of selecting materials, taking materials, processing, embedding the wand core, debugging, etc. The library closed at 9 o'clock in the evening. Moon had only read half of the content about the selection of wand materials, and he found a lot of problems. The book only records the characteristics of wood suitable for making wands, but does not say how to find wood with magical characteristics. It is impossible that all trees can be used. The problem you mentioned is likely to be a secret of the Ollivander family. If they write this into the book, the wand shop may go bankrupt. On the way back to the common room, Hermione gave the most likely correct answer. But this is not what Moon wanted. Now he is stuck in the first step of making a wand. The two talked and came to the door of the common room. As soon as the fat lady asked for the password, Hermione suddenly stopped and looked at Moon in confusion. You didn't seem to take a detour. Moon couldn't keep up with the speed of Hermione's thinking until she looked at the spiral staircases. Yes, this is the shortest way. How did you do it? It's only the second day of school. Going to the Gryffindor common room requires walking up many stairs. These stairs are not fixed. They change all the time. Even senior students often go the wrong way. However, Moon memorized the characteristics of all the stairs in just one day. Shouldn't I remember the route after walking it once? Please give me the follow-up reading, monthly ticket, and recommendation ticket from the Little Wizard. Chapter 17 Moon's Memory. Hermione showed strong doubts about Moon's memory. For the sake of rigor, Hermione took out the book Making and Maintaining Magic Wands that she had just borrowed after entering the common room. There were still many classmates gathered in the common room at this time. Without the constraints of their parents, everyone slept very late. Harry and Ron were playing wizard chess again, and Neville seemed to be looking for something again. Hermione found an empty seat and sat down directly, then opened the book in her hand and flipped through the first few pages at random. What is the most taboo about ash wands? Hermione pointed at the content in the book and stared at Moon with suspicious eyes. It cannot be given or used by others, otherwise it will lose its magic. Moon casually sat opposite Hermione and blurted out. What should I pay attention to when using a black walnut wand? Hermione flipped back 2 pages. Because black walnut cannot adjust its internal problems by itself, its owner must be honest with his heart. Moon answered again. and then looked at the little girl opposite in confusion. "Didn't you just read these, Hermione?" Hermione didn't answer Moon's question, but turned back 5 pages. "What kind of user is best suited to use Vila wand core? It will choose sensitive and willful people, especially those with good looks." Hermione's hand kept pointing at the answer in the book. When Moon finished speaking, she seemed to be sure of something and slammed the book shut. "Bang! I'll answer your question now. I did read the book, but I don't have such an enviable memory." After Hermione finished speaking, she stood up and left the lounge. Although Moon was puzzled, he could see that the little witch seemed a little aggrieved. "Are you okay, Moon?" Harry heard the noise and walked over. "It should be. It's fine," Moon answered uncertainly. "Don't worry about her. No one knows why she is like this, right?" Ron agreed indifferently, holding a wizard chess piece in his hand. "Come on, Harry, finish this game with me." Harry and Ron continued to play chess, and Moon sat next to them and read a book. On Wednesday, the weather became gloomy. Moon got up early that day. Since he knew that learning magic required a lot of knowledge, he resumed his previous schedule when he lived in the bridge tunnel. This way, he could save at least 3 hours a day to read books, not counting the time when he didn't have homework at night. If all of this is counted, he would have at least 5 hours more time than others. All of this is time he can use freely. In the morning, Moon read Modern Magic Pronunciation Table. He must master those difficult magic syllables as soon as possible so that he can keep up with the professor's teaching progress. When he finished reading the 3rd chapter, his roommates also walked out of the dormitory one after another. After washing up, they went to the auditorium to eat together, led by Moon. "That's cool, Moon. I think you can be an adventure guide." After taking a shortcut down the stairs, Seamus couldn't help but praise him. According to him, his father works in a Muggle travel agency. "I think you can manage the Flu network in the future. My father said that the work in this department requires a very strong memory." After listening to Ron and Seamus, Moon felt that both jobs were good. Of course, if he had to choose, he would definitely choose exploration. Not only did Seamus say that this job paid more, but the most important thing was that exploration would allow him to better understand the world. The sky above the auditorium was covered with low-hanging dark clouds, just like the weather outside, but this did not affect Moon's mood for dinner. Because they were going to have a defense against the dark arts class today, Moon clearly remembered that at the welcome party, this young professor was the only professor with 2 wizard stripes. Although one of the wizard stripes was so faint that it was almost invisible, it was enough to prove that this professor was more peculiar than the others. Moon guessed right, Professor Quirrell was indeed very peculiar. As soon as he appeared, the whole classroom was immediately filled with a strong smell of garlic. In order to appreciate the style of this professor, Moon had specially chosen a seat in the front row, and he now regretted it extremely. "Professor, why does your scarf smell so bad?" Seamus, who was sitting with Moon, asked first. This is a gift from an African prince who helped me solve the zombie resurrection," Professor Quirrell actually stuttered, which surprised Moon. "The zombie resurrection? Is it true? How did you defeat it?" Seamus asked impatiently, and the people around him looked over curiously. The weather is really good today, Professor. It's cloudy today." Seeing that Quirrell didn't want to answer this question, Seamus pouted and looked at him disappointedly. "Oh, really? That's just right. Let's start the class." Moon can finally justify the name of the History of Magic class, and the Defense Against the Dark Arts class has been promoted to the most boring class. Although Professor Bin's lectures can make people drowsy, he will occasionally give related events of historical figures, which are all knowledge that is not on the textbooks. Quirrell can only read Dark Magic, Self-Defense Guide word for word. Not only do those who listen carefully dislike this course, but even those who like to sleep in class don't like it. Because the strong smell of garlic makes them unable to sleep peacefully. When the bell rang, everyone rushed out of the classroom, hoping to get a breath of fresh air in time to save their lives. "I think George is right. His scarf must be full of garlic." Ron leaned on the corridor fence and took a deep breath before speaking. "No, his scarf must have been soaked in garlic liquid." Moon, who had grown garlic at York Farm, knew that garlic with skin would not have a strong smell. Even if the skin was peeled, as long as the garlic was not broken, it would not have the strong smell of a Quirrell scarf. "Well, this smell makes me lose my appetite, Ron. I think you will regret it." Harry took over the conversation. "Why?" "Because there are New Zealand lamb chops today." "Really? Then I'll eat 10. Ron said and ran quickly towards the auditorium. Harry and Moon looked at each other and quickly followed. Hermione didn't come out of the classroom until then. She looked at Harry and Moon who were walking away. She also took a few deep breaths and walked slowly towards the auditorium with a few big books. There was another herbal class in the afternoon. This time, Professor Sprout was doing it herself throughout the course. Because she wanted to use magic to quickly dry a fresh rhizome of narcissus, so that it could be used as a finished herb. Okay, that's it. Professor Sprout picked up a rhizome of narcissus that had just been baked on a flame spell. It is best to dry it in the sun for 7 days. This time it is just to show you the finished product. Everyone can take one and observe it carefully. This class was just observation, which was very simple for Moon. After watching Professor Sprout instruct all the students, Moon raised his hand and asked a question that bothered him. Professor, are the trees used to make one's magical plants? If they are, how can we tell them apart? Hearing Moon's question, Professor Sprout showed a surprised expression, but Hermione reacted even more. Asking for the follow-up reading, monthly tickets, and recommendation tickets in the hands of the little wizard. Chapter 18 Professor's Advice. Professor Sprout should be the wizard who is most proficient in herbs and plants in the whole Hogwarts. Although she was a little surprised about the question about what wood that Moon wanted to know, she was still very happy to give the answer. The wood used to make ones is not limited to the few types sold in wand shops, and the easiest way to find this kind of wood is to use magical animals such as botricles. As long as a tree has magical properties, botricles will always be the first to discover it, and will prohibit other animals, including wizards, from destroying the tree. Professor, besides botricles, is there no other way to detect or discover the properties of magical plants? The bell for the end of get out of class has already sounded, and Moon is still asking questions that bother him. Of course there are, but this requires a pair of eyes that are good at discovering, or you can witness the birth of a magical plant with your own eyes. Professor Sprout likes to discuss the knowledge of herbs and plants with people, especially with students who have talents in this area. Although Moon has just enrolled, his performance has been recognized by Professor Sprout. See it with your own eyes? How can you do that? Are there magical plants growing in the school? Moon looked around the greenhouse and felt that it was impossible for tall trees to grow in this low environment. Don't look, kid. Hogwarts does have magical trees suitable for making wands, but they are all in the Forbidden Forest. Even Ollivander will choose the right wood there. When Sprout talked about the Forbidden Forest, Moon showed a little disappointment. Because he remembered very clearly that at the opening dinner, Dumbledore explicitly prohibited new students from entering there. Okay, kid, don't be so sad. Don't you want to plant a magical plant yourself and discover its magical charm? Looking at the disappointed expression on Moon's face, Professor Sprout smiled and tried to comfort him. Really, Professor, of course, magic is never just knowledge in books. It requires wizards to experience its magic in person, Professor Sprout said, took out his wand to clean up an operating table, and then took out a quill to write on parchment. In view of Mr. Moon Scarlett's excellent performance in the herbology class, he is allowed to go to the edge of the Forbidden Forest to collect magical plants. Professor, Pomona Sprout, handing over the parchment, Professor Sprout looked at Moon intently. Mr. Scarlett, you have to promise me that you cannot enter the Forbidden Forest. In addition, you have to ask Professor McGonagall for her opinion. If she agrees, you can go. Moon glanced at the content on the parchment and smiled. I promise. Professor, don't be too happy too soon, Mr. Scarlett. It's not that easy to grow magical plants. Of course, if you can really grow one, I will give you a mysterious reward. Hearing that there is a reward, Moon nodded heavily and agreed. Although he was responsible for guarding the hazelnut forest in Xilin and had some understanding of planting various crops, he didn't have much confidence in magical plants. But this did not affect Moon's determination, especially after getting Professor Sprout's approval. He didn't want to live up to this trust. Moon left the greenhouse happily. His classmates were already preparing for dinner in the hall. This kid is so talented in herbs and plants. I don't know why the Sorting Hat put him in Gryffindor. Professor Sprout sighed silently as he watched Moon leave. During dinner, Ron kept urging everyone to eat more. This was the experience passed down by his brothers, because there was an astronomy class tonight. The astronomy class was from 11 p.m. to 1 p.m. Moon had never thought of taking classes at night, especially since the time period of this class was the time when he should sleep the most. Taking out the schedule and comparing it with the time on it, Moon found that he had no classes on Friday afternoon. Maybe he could go to the edge of the Forbidden Forest to pick some saplings. But he would need to go to Professor McGonagall tomorrow. After dinner, Moon read a book about wands as usual. This time he chose to read in the library. The environment in the common room was still a little too noisy. Hermione was also in the library, but this time she sat a little far away. When the library closed, Moon hurried back to the dormitory and fell asleep. He wanted to get enough energy for tonight's astronomy class. However, Moon's early sleep did not play a big role. Everyone in the astronomy class was very energetic, and Moon was no exception. This kind of energy was not only because it was the first time to take an astronomy class and felt novel, but also because of the cold wind on the astronomy tower. As the tallest building in Hogwarts, at midnight, the constant cold wind blew from all directions, making it difficult for Moon to hold the telescope all the time. Professor Aurora Sinister was a dark-skinned witch. When she explained the stars in the night sky, she always took the moon as the base point, and then observed other celestial bodies around it. Okay, today's class is over. In addition, I hope everyone can hand-draw a map of the moon, the more detailed the better, and hand it in before class next week. After announcing the end of Get Out of Class, all the little wizards squeezed to the stairs, just to be warmer, and Professor Sinistra seemed to have anticipated it and waited there in advance to let the students pass one by one. What a joke, a class in the middle of the night, and such a heavy homework, huh? Ron sniffed. That's right. Moon chart, this is what we have to draw in the first grade, Seamus also responded. Moon, Harry and Neville walked behind. They didn't say anything, just wanted to go back to sleep quickly. Even if the stars at night are beautiful, you will get tired of looking at them for 2 hours in a row. After returning to the dormitory, the little wizards made a lot of noise, and Beng, who was awakened, climbed out of the tree nest to warn them once. Sorry, Beng, we will go to bed soon. The next morning, Moon got up early as usual. While others were still asleep, he had finished reading today's modern magical pronunciation table and previewed the pronunciation of spells related to transfiguration. During breakfast, Hermione, who hadn't talked to Moon for a day, came over with a pile of textbooks in her hands. This is the Oxford reading tree you wanted, Bang. The thick stack of books made a dull sound when placed on the dining table. Moon had always thought that this book would be a big book at most, but he never thought that it would be a textbook of dozens of volumes. He looked at Hermione in a daze. Do you have to read all of these? Of course, if you want to quickly write down the key points of the professor's explanation in class. You need to read them all, Hermione said proudly and sat opposite. In fact, this set of books was delivered by the owls in the school shed yesterday. In order to deliver the set of books, Hermione's father rented 3 owls. Looking at Moon's frown, Hermione felt a little relieved. Okay, thank you, Hermione. His expression gradually became calm, and Moon sincerely thanked Hermione. Hearing that Moon actually planned to read so many books, Ron sat next to him and was stunned. He even forgot to chew the delicious pie. What are you doing? Aren't the textbooks for class enough? Ron exclaimed in comprehension. Of course, my goal is to read all the books in the library. Finding that Moon actually accepted all this calmly, Hermione's face turned cold, and she turned her head and responded to Ron as a matter of course. Please give me the follow-up reading, monthly ticket and recommendation ticket from the Little Wizard. Chapter 19, Daily Prophet Speculations. There won't be any real conflicts between 11-year-old classmates. This is a common sense that Moon has known for a long time. Of course, this is unless someone deliberately picks a quarrel. For example, Malfoy. In the past 2 days, it is inevitable to run into Slytherin students in class or at meals. Everyone is most concerned about Harry and the scar on his head. Moon also feels that there is no grudge between him and Malfoy, but the other party seems to pay close attention to him. My dad said that he took all Muggle copper coins, and he bought all second-hand goods. During breakfast in the morning, Malfoy was talking to Goyle and Crabbe about the gossip brought by owls, and they kept pointing in Moon's direction. Wow. The Daily Prophet said that the person who changed the rules of Gringotts is likely to be an accomplice of the thief Dark Wizard. At the long table of Gryffindor, Lee Jordan would explain some major events in the newspaper every day, saying that this would help him improve his commentary skills. And his good friends George and Fred always echoed these major events, and would also add some funny actions to interpret them. Their tacit understanding of each other's playfulness became a funny show that Moon could enjoy for free during breakfast every day. "Harry, you are the thief's accomplice." Fred came over and hugged Harry jokingly. I said, "It's not me, don't believe it. They always play tricks on me, just like they play tricks on Harry." Seeing Moon's surprised expression, Ron, who was sitting next to him, shrugged and explained. However, Ron's words did not have much effect, and Moon's expression was even more wrong. The first class this morning was transfiguration. After mastering all the syllables of the spell to turn a match into a needle, Moon completed the magic in one go. Hermione, who was sitting next to him, saw this and stared at the long silver needle with a look of unwillingness to admit defeat. At the end of the get out of class, 7 or 8 students had already mastered this magic. Professor McGonagall deliberately left a 15-inch parchment homework after class, saying that this would help to master the basic transfiguration as soon as possible. This was also the first time Moon heard of homework measured by length. After class, Professor McGonagall called Moon to her office. Along the way, his classmates all showed helpless eyes, only Hermione was slightly envious. As soon as he entered the office, Moon saw the newspaper on the desk directly. It was the one that Lee Jordan mentioned during breakfast in the morning. Mr. Scarlett, I think you should have heard the recent rumors about Gringotts Wizarding Bank. Seeing Moon's eyes, McGonagall asked directly without any concealment. Yes, the thief and the rule changer, just heard about it this morning, Moon answered very carefully. He knew that the latter mentioned in the newspaper might be him, but he had no idea that Gringotts would change the rules for exchanging gold galleons because of this trivial matter. Professor, but I don't know the thief Black Wizard at all. When Moon spoke, he muttered in his heart, the goblins and Gringotts are really stingy. Moon quickly explained to McGonagall. He didn't want the school to punish him for this matter. Of course, when I saw the reporter's signature on this report, I knew that every word in it was unreliable. Hearing what Professor McGonagall said, Moon glanced at the end of the report. Rita Skeeter, this was the name of the reporter. Don't worry, Mr. Scarlett, this report that deviates from the facts will not affect your study at Hogwarts. I just called you here to ask if you are willing to accept an exclusive interview with the Daily Prophet. Exclusive interview? With this Rita Skeeter, Moon was a little surprised. He never thought that he would be targeted by reporters because of such a small matter. Yes, Rita Skeeter wrote a letter to Dumbledore, saying that she wanted to make a series of reports on the Gringotts incident. Can I refuse, Professor? Hearing Moon's statement, McGonagall's serious expression disappeared, and then she smiled. Of course, Dumbledore didn't actually recommend her to come to school, but he still insisted that I ask your attitude first. Moon didn't know what the mysterious headmaster Dumbledore was thinking. Anyway, he really didn't like this reporter who relied entirely on speculation. In fact, apart from this, the most important thing is that Moon thinks that the interview is likely to disturb his studies. Looking at Harry after he became famous, Moon can guess what kind of treatment he will receive after the interview. In his opinion, it is better not to change everything now, so that he can study magic in peace. Okay, Mr. Scarlett, I will reply to the newspaper, but you should also pay attention. Since Rita Skeeter can find you, then other people will also notice you. Don't worry, Professor, all of this can't stop me from studying magic. Hearing Moon's childish statement, McGonagall smiled rarely. Of course I believe it. By the way, Professor McGonagall looked at Moon curiously after she finished speaking. Pomona told me that you want to go to the Forbidden Forest to collect magical saplings that can be used to make wands. Is that true? Yes, Professor. Moon confessed to McGonagall his idea of studying magical plants, and repeatedly promised that he would never go deep into the Forbidden Forest. Okay, I'll write to Hagrid. Without his help, you'd probably get lost in the Forbidden Forest. With Professor McGonagall's consent, Moon left the office happily. Now the first difficulty in making a wand has been solved. As long as he can tell which plants have magical properties, he can find the same plants when he returns to the Forbidden Forest. In the afternoon, there was a spell class. Moon, who had mastered the syllables of the illumination spell, successfully cast the spell in one go. Moreover, the time it takes for his wand to glow has already caught up with Hermione, which made Hermione, who was sitting at the same table, feel a sense of urgency. After coming out of the library in the evening, Hermione took 2 quick steps to catch up with Moon's pace. Why do you pay so much attention to wand making? You won't use this knowledge in class or exams. Just now in the library, Moon and Hermione both finished the homework left by Professor McGonagall first, and then read the books they borrowed. However, Moon was still reading Making and Maintenance of Wands, and his attitude was very serious. Hermione didn't think that Moon did this to better establish a connection with the wand, because Moon's performance in transfiguration and charms during the day was not like that of a person who couldn't control his wand. For the first time, Moon felt that he couldn't get too close to smart people. Hermione's insight was too sharp, which made it difficult for him, who is already full of secrets, to hide himself. Of course, I just like this kind of magic, Moon gave a reason that was least likely to be refuted. But it takes several years for the plants used to make wands to grow. It's very likely that you've left Hogwarts, but the tree hasn't grown yet. Moon had actually thought of Hermione's question, but since Professor Sprout believed that this was the most intuitive way to discover magical plants, it would certainly not take Moon too long. Especially since Professor Sprout also promised a mysterious reward. This further fueled Moon's confidence in wanting to grow a magical plant himself. Asking for follow-up reading, monthly tickets, and recommendation tickets from the Little Wizard. Chapter 20 Bengbeng's New Game. Moon and Hermione were still discussing the feasibility of growing wand plants, but the common room was a scene of another kind of joy. The Weasley brothers were shouting something, and Harry and Ron were shouting along, and almost everyone was happy about something. Moon was stunned by the scene as soon as he walked in. Although he had long known that Gryffindor was the happiest house, it was rare to see so many people cheering in the common room. Moon is back. Seeing Moon coming in from the door, Harry quickly walked forward. Look, the owner of the 5-time champion is back, yes, and it will win the 6th game soon. Moon had no idea what the Weasley brothers were talking about, and Hermione next to him was also curious about this scene. Come on. Boom has won 5 games in a row and got 5 silver sickles, Harry said as he dragged Moon into the crowd. There was a small table in the middle of the crowd, and Boom was happily jumping around on the table holding a silver sickle. After seeing Moon, Bengbeng quickly put the silver sickle into his pocket and jumped into Moon's arms. It's so amazing. It helped me find Lef again, and then George saw it, so there was this competition. From Neville's explanation, Moon finally knew the whole story. It turned out that Bengbeng helped find Lef again, and then George and Fred took the opportunity to organize a pet hide-and-seek competition. Bengbeng lived up to expectations and won 5 victories, and also got the 5 silver sickles raised by everyone. Moon, let it try again. There's still one last silver sickle. It is very likely that the 6-time champion will be born tonight. Fred came over and put his arm around Moon's shoulders, smiling happily. Moon looked at Bengbeng and found that he was also eager to try, so he put it back on the small table. Not only Bengbeng participated in the competition, but also Ron, Spotted and many pets of senior students. And the target they were looking for was Lef in Neville's hand. The game started. First, a circle of people surrounded the small table in the middle, on which all the pets participating in the competition were placed. Mouse, Cat, Toad, Pygmy Puff, and Bumble in the middle. Seeing that the crowd completely covered the table, Fred and George accompanied Neville to hide leads. Beep. A few minutes later, Fred, who had returned from hiding, blew the whistle, and then all the pets jumped off the small table one after another. Every student was chasing their pets to cheer them on. But Moon was standing next to the small table. Aren't you going to watch Bumble? Hermione asked Moon, who was standing still. No, he's going to become a 6-time champion. Moon was very confident in Bumble's ability to find things, but Hermione followed him out of curiosity. She wanted to know why this pet was so magical. However, her tracking was not successful, because many people began to urge their pets to follow Bumble after they found that their pets could not find leads. Now there is a long and crowded line behind Bumble. But there are exceptions, such as Ron's mouse, which actually fell asleep on the way to find leads. Boom was not in a hurry to find Lefo. He first came to the fireplace and crawled into the fireplace pipe that had not yet been lit. The toads and cats following him were all pulled down. When he came out from the other end of the pipe, he came to the door of the boys' dormitory. He had already smelled Lefo. Finally, Boom found Lefo in the pocket of a senior student's robe and got the last silver sickle as he wished. George, why did you put the toad in my pocket? After seeing the robe, Percy immediately stood up from his chair and looked at George and Fred angrily. Hearing that the Weasley brothers were going to quarrel again, Moon hurriedly took Boom back to his side. Boom, who won the victory, did not put the money in his pocket. He jumped onto the table in front of Moon and handed over the last silver sickle. Chi, give it to me. Moon looked at Boom in surprise. Giving money to others, this should not happen to Boom at all in Moon's opinion. Chirp, Of course, you are the friend of the 6-time champion. Friday is the last day of class for freshmen this week. Today's class is relatively easy. As long as you finish 2 consecutive potion classes, you can have a real rest in the afternoon. The class is in the basement of the castle, which is almost as cold as the bridge hole where Moon lives. There are glass jars of different sizes in the classroom, in which various animal specimens are soaked, which makes the little wizards who were originally excited about the weekend quiet down. Moon found that Neville, who was walking beside him, was stunned for a moment because he saw a glass jar with a toad. Professor Snape is the fastest wizard Moon has ever seen when he comes to class. In particular, he walks very fast, and the cloak behind him can flutter with it. Moon thought that Snape's lecture speed would also be very fast, but this is not the case. After class, Snape first took out the roll call list and called the names one by one according to the names on it, but when he read Harry's name, he stopped to say a few more words. Harry and Ron were sitting behind Moon, and he could feel that this gentle boy was embarrassed now. Snape's opening remarks were also very intense. He was also the only professor who called the young wizard a fool or a fool. Potter, after the opening remarks, Professor Snape suddenly focused his attention on Harry. What will I get if I add narcissus root powder to wormwood infusion? Moon noticed Harry's panic. Everyone was participating in the 6 Crowns of Bouncing competition last night, and Harry must not have previewed 1,000 magical herbs and fungi. Hermione, who was sitting at a table in front, had already raised her hand high, but Professor Snape had already skipped her and walked back. After Harry answered that he didn't know, Snape asked 2 more questions in a row, about Bezoars and Wolfsbane. Harry was deducted 1 point in the end for suggesting that Snape should ask Hermione. The reason was that he contradicted the teacher. But just when everyone thought that Professor Snape's questioning session was over, he suddenly came to Moon. Mr. Scarlett, I heard that you have been allowed to go to the Forbidden Forest to look for magical plants. Please tell me what herbs are needed to repair plant damage. Snape's question was completely beyond the content of the textbook, and even Hermione, who was sitting in front, put down her hand. Malfoy, who was far away, also showed a triumphant smile. If it is a small epidermal injury, you need to use the juice of aloe and dandelion. If there is a branch break, you need to use the leaves and bark of the elderberry, crush them, apply them to the broken part, and then fix them with a bandage. This is the content of wand making and maintenance, which Moon had just read yesterday. Hearing Moon's answer, Snape's eyes locked on him tightly, and his cold eyes seemed to be able to see through Moon. Well said, it seems that I can't refuse Sprout's request. Snape said something that only Moon could hear, and turned to the podium. Hermione turned her head and glanced at Moon. Although she had known that Moon had a good memory, she still felt a little frustrated when she could answer this question. Malfoy, who was far away, also showed a disappointed expression at this time. He expected Moon to be deducted points, but it did not happen. Okay, now you will form groups of 2 and take out your cauldrons. Chapter 21 Moon's Wizard Bar Changes. Moon discovered a secret of Malfoy. He found out the reason why Malfoy was so sure that he would be assigned to Slytherin on the boat. Because in these 2 potion classes, Professor Snape scolded almost everyone, and only Malfoy received his praise. Even if Moon sliced the dried nettles very neatly, crushed the snake teeth into small and even pieces, and even if Hermione's technique was light and the spell chanting was accurate, it was not as good as Malfoy's graceful action of putting a slug into the crucible. Fortunately, Moon did not deliberately seek the professor's praise. He stared at the crucible on the table very attentively. Whenever Hermione stopped stirring, he would put the next potion ingredient in it. Moon, who had prepared the textbook in the morning, knew very well that this potion for treating boils was very dangerous during the refining process. Corrosion and high temperature are the biggest characteristics of this semi-finished potion. Smelling a pungent sour smell coming from the crucible, Moon's movements became more and more cautious. However, an accident still happened. Just after Moon took the crucible off the fire, Neville in the back row screamed. Moon was startled, but he still held the crucible firmly. Moon, who often works, knows that the more you can't panic at this time, otherwise the next one to scream may be himself. After placing the crucible steadily on the asbestos insulation pad and adding crushed porcupine quills, Moon turned his head to look at the scene of the accident. The potion in Neville and Seamus's crucible scattered all over the floor. The strong corrosiveness scared the surrounding classmates to jump on their chairs. And Neville, the unlucky child, was already screaming because of the burns. Large red blisters appeared on his arms and legs. Professor Snape hurried over, took out his wand and waved it lightly, and all the potions on the ground were cleaned up instantly. Idiot, did you add porcupine quills without taking the crucible off the fire? Neville was punished by Professor Snape, but it was Harry who was deducted points because he did not fulfill his obligation to remind his classmates. Moon didn't know what happened between Harry and Professor Snape, but he was sure that Malfoy and Harry had become two positive and negative cases in the potion class. Neville was finally sent to the school infirmary by Seamus, while the others continued to brew potions. Perhaps because they felt the tragic shock after Neville's potion failed, only 2 groups of potions were successfully brewed after the whole class. Malfoy and Millicent Bulstrode. Moon and Hermione. However, only Malfoy was rewarded with extra points. Moon and Hermione also did not receive extra points because they did not fulfill their obligation to remind Neville. After class, all Gryffindor students left very quickly, fearing that they would be scolded by Snape if they were a step slower. Moon was packing up Neville's textbooks and tools on a table at the back. The unlucky little wizard forgot everything here when he was sent to the school infirmary. When Moon finished packing and was about to leave, he looked up and saw the glass jar where the specimens were placed, and his reflection was clearly reflected on it. Moon found that his wizard bar actually increased a little. About a quarter of a bar. This novel discovery made all the negative emotions brought by the potion class dissipate. Moon finally proved that he was not a half-baked psychic who could not use magic, and he could also become a real magician. Moon Scarlett, if you like that bat very much, I don't mind sending you in to accompany it. Snape's cold voice sounded behind him. Moon was stunned for a moment before he saw clearly that the glass jar in front of him contained a black bat specimen with fangs exposed. I'm very sorry, Professor. I thought I might be able to help you clean up here. Moon turned around and explained awkwardly. Immediately. Leave. Feeling that Snape seemed to be on the verge of exploding, Moon picked up everything and ran out of the potion classroom quickly. However, when he stepped out of the classroom door, he still expressed his gratitude. Thank you, Professor. Moon didn't know whether the change in his wizard bar was related to today's potion refining. It didn't matter now. Anyway, he was very happy. Even if Professor Snape was too strict, he still learned to make a potion to treat oils. You should respect those who teach you knowledge. This is also the principle that Uncle Neil taught Moon. Coming to the hall, Moon enjoyed a delicious lunch. During this time, he carefully observed the changes in the wizard bars of all the freshmen. When they entered school a week ago, only Hermione had half a bar of wizard bar. Now a week has passed, and Hermione has fully proved her ability. The spell can always be successful in one try, and the same is true for transfiguration and potion making, not to mention the history of magic and defense against the dark arts classes that only require memorization. The only place where she might lose points is because of the unpleasant smell of fertilizer in the greenhouse, which makes her not very fond of herbology class. However, this does not hinder her excellent performance in herbology class. The magic bar above Hermione's head has exceeded half a bar. She is still the first among the freshmen, and she is far ahead of the second echelon. Looking around the freshmen on each table, Moon saw several slightly longer magic bars. Malfoy from Slytherin, Michael Corner from Ravenclaw, and Susan Bones from Hufflepuff. The magic bars of these 3 people are about 1/3 of a bar. Next is Moon, with a magic bar of 1/4 of a bar. There are also some classmates with the same length as him, but most of them are from Ravenclaw College. As for his roommates, Moon looked at Harry, Ron, and Seamus. It seems to be blank. Of course, it has only been a week, and the current magic strength cannot represent the future. Moon believes that everyone will gradually become better. He took a look at the wizard bar of the second-year students, and the shortest one was the same length as his own. This made Moon feel more urgent. He didn't want to be like this in the second year. Fortunately, he was very clear about his disadvantages. Weak basic knowledge, inaccurate spell pronunciation, and untimely recording of the key points of the professor's lectures. He has found solutions to these problems. Moon thinks that his progress in magic learning will definitely become smoother and smoother. However, it is not enough to be smooth only in Hogwarts. He also has to consider what to do after returning to Xilin. Thinking of this, Moon took a sip of his after-meal tea and quickly ran to the dormitory. There was no class on Friday afternoon, so it was a good time for him to go to the Forbidden Forest to find saplings, but before that he had to find Hagrid first and take Bumble over to find out the way. This was also a good opportunity for Bumble to expand his range of activities. After taking the certificate issued by Professor Sprout and putting Bumble on his shoulder, Moon quickly left the castle. Moon had already found out the way to Hagrid's cabin. There was a meadow after the gate, and then you could walk along the path. The scenery along the whole road was very good, and you could even see the Black Lake from afar. This was also the place where Moon rocked the boat to scare Malfoy. Bumble really liked the scenery in the wild, especially when he saw the Black Lake. He chirped non-stop. "You can come and play later, but you can't enter the forest." Moon pointed to a vast forest behind the cabin in the distance. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 22, The Magical Botricle. Hagrid's cabin is located at the edge of the Forbidden Forest. From a distance, the cabin looks small, but when you get closer, you can see that the wooden door alone is as tall as 4 or 5 moons. Many of the wood used to build the cabin are very old, and many of them have small white mushrooms growing on them. Moon doesn't mind these things, because he also has a house like this at York Farm. Knock, knock, knock. Knock on the half-closed wooden door. First, a dog barked in the cabin, and then Hagrid's voice sounded. "Stand back, Fang." Wait a minute. Moon stood outside the door honestly, and even prepared to pick up a wooden stick by the door. From the sound of the dog barking, Moon could already tell that the dog should be big. After a while, the wooden door opened, and a big head with a face full of hair appeared. "Oh, it's you, the boy who raised the Niffler." "Hello, Hagrid." Chirp. Moon and Bengbeng greeted the big guy in front of them together. "Bengbeng, right? I'm very impressed with it. It's rare to see a sniffer as sensible as it," Hagrid said as he opened the wooden door. "Come in." Walking into the wooden house, Moon saw the big black dog behind Hagrid at first sight. The iron chain around its neck was firmly held in Hagrid's hand. "Woof woof woof, this is Fang. Don't look at its fierce barking. In fact, it is very timid," Hagrid explained with a wry smile. He was afraid that Fang's fierce appearance would scare others. "Of course, I don't see any fierceness in its eyes." Moon said this not as a compliment, but because he had really seen fierce hounds. In Xilin, he had to guard hundreds of acres of hazelnut forests by himself, which was actually not a very safe thing. Fortunately, the farm has its own guard team, which also keeps more than a dozen big black dogs. These black dogs are beasts that can fight with wolves, and each of them has a very fierce look in their eyes. When facing Moon, Fang, as Hagrid said, had more curiosity in his eyes, and even a hint of fear. "So you can feel it, too." "That's right, Fang is still a little baby," Hagrid said as he gently touched Fang's head twice, then turned around and started looking for something in the chest next to his wooden bed. "Ha, I found it." Hagrid turned around, and Moon saw that he was holding a small jar of dried worms. "This is dried flower caterpillars. Your Bumblebee will definitely like it very much." Sure enough, when Hagrid took out the dried worms, Bumblebee, who had been sitting on Moon's shoulder, jumped up immediately. Moon's hand speed was very fast and caught it in midair. "Wow, you two are really in sync," Hagrid said as he opened the jar and pinched out a small dried worm with his thick fingers and handed it over. "Eat slowly, child, there are still a lot." Hagrid's intimate action surprised Moon very much. He never thought that such a strong man would be so friendly to small animals. "Okay, Moon, you are here for the thing that Professor McGonagall said." Hagrid fed Bumblebee and looked at Moon. "Yes, I want to find a few saplings that can be used to make ones on the edge of the Forbidden Forest," Moon said as he took out Professor Sprout's certificate. Hagrid took it and looked at it for a long time, reciting the contents of the certificate intermittently. This scene reminded Moon of the scene when he saw the Hogwarts admission letter. "Is Hagrid illiterate?" Moon shook his head and dispelled this absurd idea. "Well, kid, although I don't know what you are looking for these magical saplings for, you are here at the right time," Hagrid said as he led Moon outside the house. He took out a shovel and a basket from a room where miscellaneous items were piled up. "These are tools prepared for students to be detained. You can take them to the north. A botricle happened to be there 2 days ago. I believe you will gain something." Hagrid handed the shovel and basket to Moon, and then took out a glass jar from his pocket. "This is a slug, which is Botricle's favorite snack." Moon didn't expect Hagrid to be so well prepared, which saved him a lot of effort. From the books borrowed from the library, Moon knew that wherever Botricle appeared, It generally meant that there were magical trees that could be used to make wands. Moon was about to thank Hagrid after taking the tool, but Hagrid suddenly slapped his forehead again. "Oh, look at my memory, you still have to take this," Hagrid said and went back to the house, and soon came out with a long tube-shaped object. This is a communication firework. If you encounter an emergency, you can pull the rope below towards the sky, and then Fang and I will rush over. "Thank you, Hagrid, you are so well prepared. Can I leave the boom with you?" "Of course, I don't think it wants to leave now." Moon looked back at Boom, who was still chewing the dried flobber worm, and then left the wooden house with peace of mind. A messy path had been trampled out at the edge of the Forbidden Forest, and Moon walked north along Hagrid's huge footprints. This direction was just opposite the Hogwarts castle. After turning a corner, he could only see the green jungle and the grass behind him. There are many kinds of trees in the Forbidden Forest. Even though Moon has read all the books about wands, he still doesn't recognize some of them. The path is very quiet. Probably because it is the edge of the Forbidden Forest, there are no big animals. At most, you can see some hares and birds. After walking for an unknown period of time, a hissing sound suddenly came from the woods in front. Moon knew that it was the sound of a botricle. Looking in the direction of the sound, in a messy woodland, there were actually 3 botricles clinging to different branches. No wonder Hagrid said it was a family of botricles. Moon slowly approached and found that there were 2 big and 1 small botricles, and the small one was obviously still a child. Hissing, the botricles were not very dangerous, but when they saw Moon coming, they still made a series of intimidating sounds. "Sorry, I didn't mean to disturb you," Moon said as he took out a ground turtle from the glass jar and put it next to the mouth of the big botricle closest to him. The botricle, with its slender limbs and trunk, green all over, and 2 leaves on its head, sniffed the earthworm in Moon's hand cautiously. After finding that it was normal food, it used its long arms to pick up the earthworm. Crunch crunch. After the crisp chewing sound, the botricle left the branch it had just been clinging to with satisfaction. Moon knew that the other party agreed to let him cut a piece of wood, but he did not do it. In Moon's eyes, the willow tree guarded by the botricle was no different from the ordinary willow tree next to it. Even if he cut it back, he would not know how to distinguish it. "I want a thin branch of it to plant it back. Can you help me find which one will grow into the one you just guarded?" The botricle must have never seen someone like Moon. He doesn't want a finished product, but a thin branch. He first looked at the 3 branches extending from the trunk, and then looked at the glass jar in Moon's hand. "Okay, thank you for your hard work," Moon said and took out another earthworm. Chapter 23, Timber Collection Success. After eating the earthworm, the botricle fiddled with its long tentacles and prepared to start working. Watching the other party's movements, Moon suddenly felt that the little animal seemed to understand what he said. Can I really communicate with magical animals? Remembering that Ron had said 2 days ago that it was very likely that he could understand the words of magical animals, Moon couldn't help but doubt it. Is Ron really right? Moon shook his head and threw this absurd idea behind his mind. He had seen too few magical animals and it was too early to draw conclusions. While Moon was thinking, the botricle had slowly climbed onto a thin branch. This was the thinnest of the 3 branches. Although he didn't know why the botricle chose it, Moon didn't doubt anything. After getting the other party's consent, he directly cut off the branch with a knife in his hand. In the same way, Moon collected a total of 3 suitable branches and saplings. In addition to the first willow tree, the remaining ones were a grapevine and a holly sapling. Putting the saplings into the basket and covering them with wet sackcloth, Moon quickly returned along the original path. Now these young branches are the most fragile, and he must plant them as soon as possible. When he was halfway there, a huge black shadow suddenly flashed over the Forbidden Forest. Moon had never seen such a big black bat. He subconsciously wanted to take out the fireworks given by Hagrid, but the black shadow quickly disappeared into the depths of the Forbidden Forest. No wonder Dumbledore doesn't allow people to come to the Forbidden Forest. Such a big bat should be able to suck a person dry. Knowing that some bats are blood-sucking, Moon didn't let go of the fireworks until the bats disappeared for a while, and then he ran wildly on the path. When he returned to Hagrid's hut, Bung's happy shouting had already been heard, and there were also the voices of Harry and Ron next to him. "Oh, welcome back, Moon. How is the picking?" Seeing Moon's figure at the door, Hagrid stood up from the big chair and walked out. "Very smooth, picked 3. Hearing Moon's voice, Bung had already run out quickly and jumped on him. Harry and Ron also came over curiously. They had heard from Hagrid that Moon collected magical saplings that could grow into wands. Is that it? Nothing special, Ron asked curiously after looking at the saplings in the basket. Of course you can't see it now. Hagrid took the basket and walked out. To be precise, if you don't plant it yourself, you may never discover its magical place in your life. Moon agreed with what Hagrid said, and he walked out with Hagrid's steps. In the vegetable garden behind the hut, Hagrid had prepared several transparent bottles and a pile of wet mud, which just met the needs of the saplings to grow. Okay, let's do it this way for now. As long as you go back tomorrow and transplant them into pots, they should be able to survive. Hagrid washed his hands in the wooden barrel next to him and looked at his masterpiece with satisfaction. All 3 saplings have been transplanted into the bottles, and they can bask in the sun freely next time. Thank you very much, Hagrid, Moon said sincerely. Oh, it's okay. Professor McGonagall told me to do this, Hagrid said as he stretched out his huge hand and embraced Moon, Harry and Ron and walked into the cabin. It's rare for me to be so lively here. How about some afternoon tea? Hagrid made all his afternoon tea by himself, a rock cake that was bigger than Moon's head, a big cup of hot red tea, and a few wild fruits picked from the Forbidden Forest. This rough way of eating made Moon feel like he was back in the Forbidden Forest. Hagrid was very enthusiastic, which made it impossible for the little wizards to refuse. After tasting a bite of the rock cake, Moon felt that the name was definitely not wrong. It was too hard. Fortunately, Moon had a way to deal with hard ingredients. He first squeezed a few wild fruits into the black tea, then tore the rock cake into small pieces and put them into the tea. After the rock cake fully absorbed the water, he took a spoon and started eating. After soaking, the rock cake became soft, and you could even taste the unique grain aroma inside. After adding wild fruits to the tea, the bitter taste was diluted and there was a light fruity aroma. Wow, I never thought that rock cakes could be eaten like this. How about adding some other ingredients? Seeing that Hagrid also liked this Xilin specialty food very much, Moon suggested that he could add some dried fruit pieces like hazelnuts, which would be more fragrant. Little Moon, burp, does this soaked rock cake have a name? Hagrid burped comfortably after eating all 5 rock cakes. Probably not yet. This way of eating was originally the food that Moon ate when he worked on the farm, and it should not have appeared in this world yet. I think such a delicious thing should not be without a name. How about we give it a name? Harry and Ron agreed very much. They also thought that the soaked rock cake tasted better. Moon did not think about developing in the food industry of this world, so the final name changed from Moon Soaked Cake to Hagrid Shortbread. While everyone was chatting, Bengbeng on the side had made friends with Yeah. Moon was talking to Hagrid about the big black bats they met on the way back, but Harry pulled out a small piece of paper from the table. This was a part cut from the Daily Prophet, and the content was about the theft of Gringotts. Hagrid, we were there on the day Gringotts was robbed, and maybe we saw that person. Moon noticed that Hagrid's eyes were a little evasive, and he stammered that he definitely didn't. Although he didn't know why Hagrid concealed this question, it just happened to be in line with Moon's thoughts, so he also cooperated with Hagrid to change the topic. Harry did have a spirit of not giving up. He took the small piece of paper in his hand and read it carefully again. When the sunset set, the 3 said goodbye to Hagrid. Moon picked up the sleeping bong from Fang's head, and Harry and Ron helped him carry the saplings. After entering the school gate, Moon separated from the 2. He now had to go to Professor Sprout to borrow a few flower pots, otherwise the saplings might not survive tonight. 3 saplings. They are actually different varieties, which is very good. I think as long as they can hold on for 7 days, they will definitely survive. After Professor Sprout finished the inspection, he very readily asked Moon to move the 3 flower pots and promised to cash in the mysterious reward after the saplings survived. Moon didn't know what the mysterious reward was, but he knew very well that this reward was not easy to get. With his previous experience at York Farm, Moon knew that the willow tree would be the best to survive among the 3 saplings. As long as it is cut in spring and autumn, it will survive the cold winter. It has a very strong adaptability. The holly tree is a sapling plant. It needs to be watered frequently, but water cannot accumulate. Finally, the grapevine also needs cuttings, but it needs to be watered frequently, but the roots cannot be rotten by water, and it also has requirements for the soil. Moon moved the 3 saplings to the windowsill of the dormitory. He will take care of them wholeheartedly this week. Bengbeng was also very interested in these saplings and kept circling around the flower pots. After putting all the flower pots away, Seamus and Neville, who was wrapped in bandages, came back from outside. They excitedly discussed the flying lesson they were going to take next week. Chapter 24 War May Come. A notice was posted in the common room about the flying class for first-year students. The class was scheduled for the afternoon of next Thursday, but everyone had already started a heated discussion this weekend. Seamus said that he had spent his entire childhood on a flying broomstick. Ron said that he almost hired a suspended jet plane while riding Charlie's broken broomstick, and Malfoy said that he had dodged a Muggle helicopter. Moon suspected that they were all bragging. When he lived in a bridge hole, he had seen the big iron bird called an airplane. The speed of this iron bird was much faster than that of a four-wheeled car. How could a little wizard possibly avoid it? However, Moon's suspicion did not affect everyone's enthusiasm. After all, being able to fly into the sky was everyone's dream. The first weekend after school started, the expected situation of sleeping in the morning did not happen. Everyone got up much earlier than usual on this day. Even when Moon was getting ready to get up and read, Ron and Harry could no longer sleep. So you get up so early every day. Harry and Moon's beds were next to each other. Seeing that Moon had already dressed and picked up his textbook and walked out, Harry also opened his eyes wide. Moon just nodded. He noticed that the injured Neville was sleeping soundly, and quietly made a gesture to Harry to keep quiet. Moon had a lot to do today. In addition to studying wand making and maintenance, he also had to take care of the saplings and do the astronomy moon map drawing homework. When the sun was good during the day, Moon had to move the saplings outside to bask in the sun. After a whole day of observation, Moon found that the saplings had no signs of withering, which greatly boosted his confidence. The weather was also very good these 2 nights. There was no cloud at all. The moon could be clearly observed from the astronomy tower, so Moon had already drawn most of the moon map homework and would be completed tonight. Other people in the dormitory wanted to learn from this homework that was produced in advance, so they also became Moon's supervisors of learning. After lending the moon map homework to his roommates early on Sunday morning, Moon reviewed the knowledge of wand body materials. He had memorized the entire book, and now all he had to do was practice. When night fell, Moon chose to go to bed early. Tonight was the day he would return to Xilin. Sleeping in the wooden house at York Farm was not as comfortable as the dormitory at Hogwarts. This small wooden house was in the middle of the hazelnut forest, and the humidity was very high. Even though his bedding was a new wool blanket sewed by Aunt Daisy, it could not withstand the humidity here. But there were also advantages here, that is, the air was fresh, and there would be no snoring or grinding of teeth. Uncle Neil had brought people here before dawn in the morning. This time period was just the time when hazelnuts were ripe, so the first thing Moon did when he came back was to join the autumn harvest. "Little Moon, don't run so fast, take a rest before you do it," Uncle Hawk sat under a hazelnut tree, took a sip of water in a sheepskin bag, and shouted to Moon who was running over. "I'm not tired, I can pick some more." What a sincere child. All the workers who came to work were veterans and their families found by Neil. After they came down from the battlefield, they received very little federal subsidies and had to work to support their families. And Neil would provide them with such an opportunity. Fortunately, everyone here is very good to Moon. No one will criticize him for being a half-baked spiritualist. Even some old sergeants will bring Moon some homemade candies. As for why Moon is more diligent than when he harvested hazelnuts in the past 2 years, that's because he wants to take this time to take a good look at this hazelnut forest. Maybe there will be strange and magical wood in it. Moon has read in a book that hazelnut wood can also be used as the body of a magic wand. This kind of wood is very suitable for sensitive wizards. It took a full 5 days to harvest the 100 acres of hazelnut forest, and Moon did not find any hazelnut trees with magical properties. Fortunately, he did not have no harvest. 3 hazel grouse hunted with slingshots should be enough for tonight's dinner. Uncle Neil's house is in the north of Xilin town. The people living nearby are all military families, so it is very safe. Moon arrived at this small courtyard with only 3 stone houses in the afternoon. Before he entered the door, he heard Aunt Daisy's call. "Sophia, get off the table. That's a silver coin to buy rye." "Oh, Brother Moon." Sophia is the second child of Neil and Daisy, and they have a son, J. Scarlett. Seeing his cousin with brown curly hair running over to hug him, Moon quickly put the hazel grouse in his hand aside. When the little girl let go of her hand, Moon took out a penguin wood carving from his pocket and put it in front of her. "Is this an animal on the farm?" "So cute." Moon's guess was right. Girls always have no resistance to such soft and cute animals. Child, I heard from Neil. You worked hard to collect hazelnuts this time. Aunt Daisy came over to hug Moon and kissed him on the cheek. It's just right to roast these 3 hazel grouse tonight and save some expenses. Daisy looked at the hazel grouse and turned her head again. Also, kid, I made 2 winter clothes for you in the house. Go and try them out later. The dinner was very sumptuous. This was also the celebration ceremony after the farm's annual harvest. Moon deliberately gave all the fat and tender chicken to Sophia. This little girl was shorter than her peers and needed to eat more. Moon, you eat too. Neil took a sip of beer and looked over. Moon didn't say anything. He wanted to share some of the meat with his family. After all, his food at Hogwarts was already very good. Daisy glared at the drunken Neil, then turned to look at Moon. Little Moon, I heard you are saving money? In fact, your family can afford to send you to school. You don't have to work so hard. Daisy was talking about Moon exchanging wood carvings for money, but he remembered telling Uncle Neil that this matter should be kept secret. But now Daisy asked directly, it is very likely that the 3 silver coins that Neil had hidden were discovered. And Moon unfortunately became an excuse for his uncle to prevaricate his aunt again. Sure enough, Neil, who was sitting at the other end of the table, was winking at Moon. And, I'm planning to learn farm skills from Uncle Neil. For Moon, Xilin's ordinary school no longer has any appeal to him. He only wants to study magic in Hogwarts. Moon's words are not a good excuse. Aunt Daisy started her daily nagging again. After school, you can at least get a job as a clerk in a government department, but on the farm you can only deal with the land for the rest of your life. Every time Daisy said these words, Moon had to keep smiling and listening. Even if he was sure that he would not go to school, he had to respect the mistress of the house. Moon knew that Uncle Neil's family did not live a good life. In addition to supporting Jay to go to the military academy, they also had to support Sophia, and even more than 30 military families nearby. Especially now that he has solved the problem of learning magic, there is no need to let the family bear more debts. After dinner, Neil smoked his pipe and sent Moon back to the farm. Little Moon, are you sure you want to learn skills on the farm? Yes, Uncle, I want to start with timber procurement, Moon answered with certainty. Timber procurement? Neil was stunned for a moment. He didn't expect Moon to have already thought about what he wanted to learn specifically. Indeed, after the harvest is completed this year, we have to replant some trees, but this year's procurement will have to wait. Why? Moon asked curiously. He knew that Neil was a person who paid great attention to the growing season of crops. New trees must be planted before the spring warms up. This is also a guarantee of the farm's income for the coming year. At this time of year in normal years, Neil must have negotiated the price with the timber merchants. Alice, the war may be coming, and timber is already a controlled product. Chapter 25, The Magic Hermione Fears. Moon, who grew up in Xilin, had never really seen what war looked like. But he knew that the Gracia Federation was built on the corpses of his fathers. The Federation and the Melanie Empire had been at war for a full 10 years, and only Uncle Neil, Jay and him were left in the Scarlett family. Now the war has just ended for 11 years, and Fabian Ziv, known as the Mad King, would unexpectedly start another war. The day before returning to Hogwarts, Moon saw a conscription notice on the street: all men over the age of 12 must enlist to go to the Snow Eagle Mountain defense line. Moon, who returned to Hogwarts, felt a sense of urgency. He would be 12 years old in May next year, and he would be sent to the battlefield. That night, Moon stared at the 3 saplings on the windowsill and couldn't sleep. Bengbeng, who was sleeping in the treehouse, felt something was wrong with his friend. He crawled out of the treehouse, slowly came to Moon's pillow, stretched out his little paws and gently patted the little boy's face. Gee, thank you, Bengbeng. Sure enough, once someone accompanies you, your heart will always be full of strength. The next morning, Moon resumed his habit of getting up early. Now that he had finished reading Wand Making and Maintenance, he focused on reading Modern Magic Pronunciation Table in the morning. In 2 hours, Moon only read 3 chapters. This was because the pronunciation of magic words became more and more difficult to learn, and he had to try to read the new words several times. At the beginning of the new week, Moon was able to gradually keep up with the speed of the professor's lectures, thanks to the Oxford reading tree lent to him by Hermione. Although this set of reading materials has a large number of volumes, the content is simple and easy to understand, and there are many illustrations in it. This allowed Moon to quickly master a lot of basic Muggle knowledge, and his oral English level has also been improved. Now he rarely makes mistakes in the key points of his class notes. However, to be on the safe side, he will borrow Hermione's notebook after class to compare. After the history of magic class on Monday morning, Moon went to the auditorium to eat with everyone. There's nothing wrong with your notes, but you better practice your handwriting first. Seeing that Moon had finished checking, Hermione took the notebook and criticized like her little professor. Moon has now adapted to the way this little witch speaks. As long as it is about learning, she will always get the first place. And when she encounters other students who don't know how to do something, she will also actively correct them, but her tone is very direct. Okay, thank you Professor Hermione for your advice. Moon jokingly picked up the croissant on the table and started eating it. Hermione's face was flushed. Harry and Ron laughed secretly beside him. Seeing Hermione's unfriendly eyes, Moon was about to explain, but a strange voice interrupted him. Are you Moon Scarlett? The speaker was a senior student. Moon had seen him at the Hufflepuff table next door. Yes, I am. Moon stood up and shook hands with the other party. My name is Cedric Diggory, and I am the new secretary of Professor Sprout's Crab Cactus Club. Every professor at Hogwarts has his own club, which is an organization they set up for their favorite students to communicate with each other. Moon didn't know what the clubs at Hogwarts were going to do, and he looked at the other party a little blankly. Hermione and Ron next to them obviously knew something, because when they heard about the Crispy Cactus Club, their mouths and eyes widened at the same time. It seems that you don't know much yet, but it doesn't matter. I heard that you are completing a special assignment of Professor Sprout. Cedric's tone was neither hurried nor slow, and he was completely a very cultured and elegant boy. Yes, I am planting 3 saplings. Professor Sprout said that it will be determined whether they will survive in 7 days, but I am not sure whether they can survive. Moon sincerely expressed his opinion. Although the saplings are now alive and well, no one can predict what will happen in the end. Yes, saplings are always very fragile, but I still hope that you can succeed, so that the club can welcome the youngest wizard. I will try my best. Moon didn't know what the benefits of joining the club were, but he could guess from the expressions of Ron and Hermione that this should not be a bad thing, and he didn't want to disappoint Professor Sprout's expectations. Seeing Cedric walk out of the hall, Ron couldn't wait to approach him. Moon, you are so amazing. You can join the Professor's Club in your first year. Ron's eyes were full of envy when he spoke. Is it amazing to join a club? Moon asked puzzled. Of course, Bill, Charlie, and Percy all joined Professor McGonagall's Transfiguration Hut Club in their 3rd year. They are so proud every time they talk about it. Ron got all the news about the Professor's Club from his brothers. Moon didn't know Bill and Charlie, but Percy is now the head of Gryffindor, and I heard that his grades in all subjects are very good. But you are much better than them now. I must tell my family about this when I go home, and see how Percy will show off in the future. Ron has always disliked Percy. This is no secret in their dormitory, but Moon thinks it is too early to show off with achievements that have not yet been achieved. Hermione is completely different from Ron. She has a very good relationship with Percy, and they can often be seen discussing and studying in the common room. Ron, I think you should respect Percy a little. Hermione frowned and looked at Ron, who was joking with Harry. This is our own family's business. It must be said that Ron always hits the opponent's sore spot every time they quarrel. Seeing Hermione sitting back in her seat angrily, Ron continued to eat as if nothing had happened. Swish, swish. The sound of Hermione flipping through the book became louder and louder, but her eyes kept drifting over the book. Ron Moon. If the most exciting thing this week is to be said, it must be the upcoming flying class. This is also what Moon is looking forward to the most. After accepting the cross-world travel every 7 days, compared with the flying class, Moon no longer has the initial fear. But he is not as excited as those who keep talking about riding brooms and racing airplanes. Most of the little wizards are still afraid and worried. Even if they talk about riding brooms and racing airplanes, Moon thinks it is just a way to relieve fear. Among this group of people, the most unexpected is Hermione. This week, she has read the Magic Quidditch 3 times, and even when she was eating, she was nagging about the flying rules in it. Whenever Moon asked Hermione for some obscure magical knowledge, she would always bring up the topic of flying. Look, that's what the book says. It's not difficult to get your feet off the ground, right? Moon didn't have to agree with her because Hermione had already gained a loyal listener. Neville. He would agree with every word Hermione said, but he would always forget the previous few sentences. But the more he did this, the more nervous Neville became. Now the child was so nervous that he had become a little stutterer like Quirrell. Please give me the follow-up reading, monthly tickets, and recommendation tickets from the little wizard. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.